Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Broccoli Fanfics, back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Had Mutated AFO Quirk. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku Midoriya is just an average-looking kid. However, his quirk is anything but average, especially since it is considered one of the most powerful quirks of all time. Izuku sits at his desk in his junior high. In Izuku's honest opinion, he finds school to be rather boring considering that he's at the top of the class. The only reason he pays attention at all is so that the staff doesn't have anything to complain or write him up about. After all, he wants to be a hero more than anything. Unfortunately for Izuku, he has to deal with the annoyances of his class, which consists of the other students being as generic as possible even with their quirks. Izuku doesn't believe that anyone's quirk is inherently useless, but rather he believes that a quirk can only be useful if applied with the right knowledge. As his teacher had stated just a moment ago, everyone in his class wants to get into the hero course, but none of them want to put in the effort it takes to get there. Izuku has analyzed all of his classmates' quirks and has found many different ways their quirks could be used, but nobody wants to talk to him because he's a villain. The teacher says nonchalantly, "Oh yeah, Midoriya, you want to get into UE too?" Izuku looks up at his classmates, who are all looking back at him with a bored expression as they all laugh at him. What kind of school would want to take in a villain? They wouldn't even let you near their campus. Bakugo stomps over and slams his palm on his desk, causing an explosion. But Izuku doesn't move since he knew Bakugo's quirk wouldn't hurt him from that range. "Deku, you bastard. You really think UE would take a villain like you when they could have someone like me? You're just a worthless villain who wouldn't even be considered for UE's general course." Izuku sighs as he thinks, yep, same shit as always. Izuku asks with a deadpan expression, "Bakugo, if I cared what you or anyone else thought, I wouldn't even be here right now. However, since I don't care, I'm going to the UE hero course whether if you like it or not." Also, Izuku looks over the class as blue pentagrams appear in his eyes. Is it really such a good idea to make someone you consider a villain angry? Izuku's classmates look away in slight fear before Izuku turns his attention back to Bakugo. "Besides, if I'm really as much of a villain as you say I am, then you have nothing to worry about. After all, why would UE allow a future villain to attend their school, right?" Bakugo yells as he lets off a few more explosions in his palm. "You trying to pick a fight with me?" Izuku answers, "No, I'm just saying that if you really believe in your logic, then there would be no reason as to why you should be angry with me, since by your reason, I wouldn't even have a chance to attend UE." Bakugo stands at Izuku's desk fuming from Izuku's argument. "Bakugo, please take your seat. We still have class to attend to." Bakugo huffs before he stomps off back to his desk as the rest of the school day continues. Izuku doesn't hate Bakugo necessarily. That require him to still hold an emotional attachment to Bakugo, but Izuku isn't that naive. Before their quirks came in, they used to be really good friends. But afterwards, Bakugo became volatile and abrasive. When Izuku's quirk came in, everyone turned on him, which was a shock at first. But his father had told him that people often fear those more powerful than themselves. Izuku isn't emotionless. He only allows those he cares about to see his emotions, which are mostly just his mom, dad, and sensei. Everyone else doesn't really matter to him. They've already written him off as a villain, so he has nothing to prove to them since they will only believe what they want to believe. After school, Izuku packs up his things as he hears Bakugo stomping up to his desk with his lackeys behind him. "What do you want, Bakugo?" Bakugo answers, "We're not done here yet, Deku." Izuku sighs before he stands up and looks at Bakugo with a deadpan expression. They stare at each other for a moment before Izuku comments, "Well, I'm waiting." Bakugo reaches out to grab Izuku's shoulder, but Izuku steps back to avoid his touch, much to Bakugo's annoyance. Bakugo says, "Don't even think of applying to UE, Deku, or else." Izuku asks as he quirks an eyebrow, "Or else what?" Bakugo answers, baring his teeth, "Or else I'll beat the shit out of you." Izuku quips, "You haven't beaten me since we were 5. I don't imagine anything could have changed so recently." Bakugo throws his hand at Izuku with an explosion, but Izuku dodges to the side, completely avoiding the explosion. Bakugo yells, "Don't you fucking run away from me, you damn nerd." Izuku replies, "I'm not running from you. I just don't feel like taking an explosion to the face." Bakugo lunges at Izuku, but he jumps back, avoiding the explosion again. "In any case, I'm heading home now." Izuku walks out of the class as Bakugo yells, "Get back here, Deku." Izuku sighs as he hears Bakugo storming after him, so Izuku decides now would be a good time to run. Fortunately, unlike Bakugo, Izuku actually does train and is actually quite fast and agile, so outrunning Bakugo isn't very difficult. Once Izuku is off school grounds, he's safe since people aren't allowed to use their quirks in public, and of course Bakugo wouldn't want to tarnish his perfect record. Izuku heaves a sigh as he walks off school campus heading home. He doesn't understand why Bakugo hates him so much. After all, they used to get along fine. Perhaps it could be attributed to his quirk, or perhaps it's because of how everyone has always told him he was great and never told him otherwise. Or maybe he truly believes that he's better than everyone else. If that's the case, then he'll end up more like Endeavor than All Might. Once Izuku's mind begins to quiet down, he can't hold back the lonesome feeling in his chest any longer. He doesn't understand why everyone thinks that he's a villain despite the fact that he hasn't even done anything relatively evil. Izuku understands what his father meant about people fearing his power, but Izuku has been nothing but respectful. It's all confusing to him as to why people would just assume he's a villain simply because of his quirk. But he's not going to look gift horse in the mouth. After all, there are plenty of people out there who have it worse than him. People starving, people who are homeless, and people who are just doing what they can to scrape by and survive. However, that despite knowing that other people have it worse off than him, it doesn't stop the crushing feeling of loneliness that he experiences almost every day. Sure, he has his mom, dad, and sensei who have always been there for him, but his mom practically worries herself to death. Dad hasn't been home in years, and he graduated from sensei's class a couple of years ago. He just wishes that he could make some friends, people who appreciate him for who he is rather than judge him based off his quirk. Izuku sighs before he comments while walking underneath a bridge grate, "Now I'm depressed." Suddenly he hears a metallic clang behind him, which causes him to turn on his heel to see a giant green sludge-like mass with 2 yellow eyes. The sludge man says, a medium-sized suit, you'll do just fine. Izuku activates his quirk, showing blue pentagrams in his eyes, which he uses to predict the sludge villain's movement. The sludge villain lunges at him, but Izuku's side rolls out of the way of the villain's attack, then jumps away from the villain to both gain some distance as well as bring the fight out in the open. The sludge villain yells out, "Get back here, you brat." Izuku replies with a hardened glare, "Sorry, but I don't feel like becoming somebody's skin suit today, thank you very much." The villain growls before lunging at Izuku again, who backflips away. "Stop moving around." Izuku quips, "Right, because I'm definitely going to listen to what a villain tells me to do." Suddenly the manhole the sludge villain came out of bursts off with an all too familiar laugh. "Never fear, because I am here." Both the villains and Izuku's eyes widen before All Might himself turns to the villain and throws a punch, which Izuku dashes to the side to avoid Texas smash. The villain becomes a green splattered mess on the pavement, rendering him completely immobile. Izuku looks at All Might in complete awe as he stops using his quirk. All Might laughs triumphantly. "Sorry for getting you caught up in my heroing. The layout of the sewer system is pretty complicated." Izuku begins fanboying. "Oh my god, I can't believe it's actually All Might. He's actually here standing in front of me. He actually really saved me. Oh my god." All Might asks as he approaches Izuku, "Are you alright, young man?" Izuku answers, "Yes sir, I'm completely fine thanks to you sir." All Might laughs as he says, "At ease, young man. There's no need to be so formal with me." Izuku replies, "Yes." See, Izuku cuts himself off before he calms down. "Yes, All Might." All Might then pulls out 2 empty soda bottles seemingly out of nowhere as he unscrews one and begins scraping the villain into the bottle. Izuku offers, "Here, let me help you. It'll be much faster if I just use my quirk." All Might looks over at Izuku as pentagrams appear in his eyes with his hands raised and begins making pulling motions, causing the sludge to be pulled towards him, which he then dumps into the bottle. Once both bottles are filled, All Might comments, "That's quite the useful quirk you have there." Izuku blushes as he replies, "Thank you, All Might. But actually that was my mom's quirk." All Might hums in confusion as he tilts his head before Izuku explains, "My quirk allows me to analyze and copy anything I see. It really helps with homework as well as training in martial arts, and it also allows me to copy other people's quirks." All Might asks in a serious tone, "Quirks?" Izuku answers, "Yeah, I've already copied a bunch of other quirks, but due to the laws I'm not allowed to use them in public. I actually want to become a hero and go to Yui, but..." Izuku looks down as he says, "People keep on telling me that they won't accept me. They think that I have a villain's quirk and that Yui wouldn't accept someone like me." All Might replies after a moment of silence, "Young man, there is no such thing a villain's or hero's quirk. It is what you do with your power that determines who you are." Izuku begins tearing up as he looks up at All Might with a bright smile. "Thank you, All Might. I really needed that." All Might then walks away as he says, "Well, I must get this villain to the police station. Thank you for your support, young man." All Might bounds off as Izuku waves, "See you, All Might." After All Might is gone from sight, Izuku begins walking back home, feeling lighter on his feet until he realizes, "Crap, I forgot to get his autograph." Meanwhile, All Might lands on a nearby building as he disappears into steam. "Damn it, my time almost ran out talking to that kid." Toshinori waves the steam away. "I wonder if it was such a good idea to tell that kid what I said. He looks almost like..." Toshinori shakes his head. "No, it can't be. It must be a coincidence." Toshinori then says as he heads for the door, "Now then, let's get you down to the station." Toshinori pats at his pocket, but feels nothing. He looks down to see that both bottles are missing from his pocket. Toshinori then hears an explosion off in the distance and sees smoke coming from an alleyway. Damn it, I was careless. As Izuku is on his way home, he hears an explosion in the distance behind him. Another hero fight. Might as well go check it out. Izuku runs off as he texts his mom that he'll be getting home little later than usual. Once he arrives at the scene, he sees that the alleyway is covered in flames. The heroes at the scene are Death Arms, Backdraft, Kamui Woods, Mount Lady, and another hero that Izuku doesn't recognize. Izuku pushes his way through the crowd to get a better view of the villain fight. But once he does, he realizes that it's the same sludge villain that attacked him before. Izuku thinks to himself, wide-eyed, what happened? All Might had him. Did something happen to him? One of the people in the crowd comments how the villain has a hostage, at which point Izuku uses his quirk. But when he does, he notices that the hostage is Bakugo. Izuku analyzes the situation for a moment before he calls out in a commanding tone, Backdraft. Use your quirk on the sludge villain to dilute his body so that he can't hold his form. Kamui, keep getting civilians out of danger. Death Arms and everyone else try to put out the fires. The heroes look back at Izuku in the crowd before he yells out, hurry up or he'll die. The heroes then do as Izuku suggested. Backdraft begins using his quirk on the villain, which begins to dilute his body, allowing Bakugo to catch a breath, while Death Arms uses his strength to send out enough wind pressure to blow out the flames, along with Mount Lady, who stamps out the flames with one foot. Once the villain's body is diluted enough to no longer hold its form, Kamui Woods grabs Bakugo from the villain's grasp and pulls him to safety. Once it is all taken care of, the police gather up the villain and take him away, while the heroes compliment Izuku. Thanks for the help, kid. You certainly gave us the guidance necessary to take down that villain. With your eye for detail, you'll make a great hero. Izuku blushes as he scratches the back of his head with a smile. I didn't really do much. I just told you all what to do, which was pretty rude in hindsight. Death Arms chuckles as he ruffles Izuku's hair. It's all right, kid. Thanks to you, we managed to save that kid. Mount Lady grabs one of Izuku's hands with a flirty look. Make sure that when your internships come in, you intern with me. Izuku blushes madly, making him look like a strawberry, as Kamui reprimands that is no way a hero should act. Mount Lady replies as she turns to Kamui, oh come on, I'm just having some fun. Izuku says with a heartfelt smile, thank you all ... for believing in me. The heroes all look at Izuku surprised before Backdraft replies, you're welcome, young man. But you should probably head on home. I'm sure your parents are getting worried about you. Izuku snaps to attention, oh right. Thank you all, I'll see you later. Izuku runs off as the heroes wave him goodbye, while Bakugo glares at him as the paramedics check him over. Izuku texts his mom that he's on his way home as he hears Bakugo call out Deku. Izuku sighs before he looks at Bakugo running towards him, thinking, what does he want now? Bakugo pants before he yells, I didn't need your help. I was doing just fine on my own. Izuku quirks an eyebrow as Bakugo glares at him, you didn't do anything, you did nothing. Bakugo turns on his heel as he yells, I don't owe you anything. As Bakugo walks off, Izuku asks himself, was he expecting me to hold that over his head or something? Izuku shakes his head, I don't think I'll ever understand him. Izuku then looks at the setting sun as he says aloud, but now I have more people who believe in me, so I won't stop until I become a hero who saves everyone with a smile on his face. Izuku continues walking home with his head held high and proud that pro heroes acknowledged him as having the potential of becoming a hero. As Izuku walks in the door, he calls out, Mom, I'm home. Inko replies from the kitchen, welcome home, sweetie. Dinner is almost ready. Izuku kicks off his shoes as he walks in the living room as Inko asks, did you have a good day? Izuku answers as he sits his backpack down on the couch, yeah, I got to meet All Might, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Backdraft, and the new hero who just debuted this morning, Mount Lady. Inko replies, is that the woman who can make herself grow that I saw on the news this morning? Izuku answers, yeah, that's her. Izuku then says as he walks into the kitchen, they also told me that I could be a hero. Inko looks at Izuku with a concerned look on her face. Izuku, you know your father and I have told you that you can be anything you want to be. Izuku replies as he begins setting the table, yeah, I know, but I mean no one else except Sensei has ever told me I could be a hero. Inko asks, are the kids at school still calling you a villain? Izuku sighs as he answers, yeah, but I mean it's not like they know who I am, so their opinions don't matter to me. Inko giggles, I guess you get that from your father. Izuku replies with a smile, yeah. Inko then brings the food to the table as she says with a smile, I hope you're hungry. Izuku comments as he rubs his hands together, starving. After dinner, Izuku heads to his room where he makes a call, hey dad. Hisashi replies, hey son, how was school today? Izuku answers, same crap as usual. Hisashi chuckles before he comments, sounds about right. Did anything interesting happen today? Izuku answers with enthusiasm, oh yeah. This morning I got to see this new hero named Mount Lady's debut. I mean the way she did it was a bit distasteful, but her quirk was amazing. She can make herself grow to the size of buildings, although I'm not sure if that's her max height or if that is just the only height she can go to. I mean, is it possible to make her 7 feet tall, or does she have to automatically become 30 or 40 feet tall? I'm also curious as to how that affects her bone structure as well as balance. I mean, she'd have to work very hard to master that kind of quirk. Izuku continues talking about her quirk as well as theorizing its limitation and its uses while Hisashi listens contently. Though Izuku doesn't get to see his dad anymore since he moved overseas for his job, he still enjoys talking to him about quirks. His father, despite how distant he is, has always been supportive of Izuku's dream of becoming a hero even if he himself didn't agree with it. However, Izuku knew how Hisashi felt about heroes, so their common ground was quirks, which was something they both enjoyed discussing and theorizing. Even though Hisashi is far away and Ko has continued to remain faithful despite it all, and Izuku has always cared for his father even if he doesn't get to see him anymore. Izuku then says, in any case, I think I've found a place that I can train at. Hisashi replies, oh yeah, where at? Izuku asks, you know Dagaba Municipal Beach. Hisashi answers, yeah, your mom and I used to go there for our dates before you were born. Izuku explains uncomfortably, well, in recent years it's been used for illegal dumping, so I was thinking that I could use it as a place for weight training, you know. Hisashi hums before he replies, that would be good for training. It's just disappointing that anyone would let a beautiful beach like that to go to waste. Izuku comments, I know, right? Hisashi then says, on the bright side, you'd be making it beautiful again, so there's that and you get training out of it. Izuku chuckles before he replies, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Hisashi then comments, by the way, you began training at the dojo when you were 8 and have managed to keep up your training since you graduated. Don't you think you're strong enough? Izuku answers, Dad, if I'm going to be the kind of hero to save everyone with a smile, I need to be as strong as I can possibly be. Hisashi replies with a sigh, I understand, but try to be careful, okay? I'll see about coming up with a schedule for you since I know you're the type to not stop working until you're done. Izuku quips with a smug grin, I wonder who I get that from. Hisashi chuckles before he says, well son, unfortunately I've got to go now. Izuku asks with a whine, already? Hisashi answers, yeah, I'm sorry, but we can talk more over the weekend. Izuku replies, all right. Hisashi says, I love you, Izuku. Izuku replies, I love you too, Dad. They both hang up as Izuku falls across his bed and stares at the ceiling. It seems like Dad has been getting more and more busy lately. I shouldn't complain. I mean, he's the reason Mom is able to stay at home and take care of the house while he's away and I'm at school. Izuku looks over at one of his All Might posters as he says to himself, I just wish he was here. The following day, while he's at school, Bakugo doesn't even try to mess with him, likely because deep down he knows that if it weren't for Izuku he wouldn't be here right now. During school, Hisashi sends him a text with a file attachment with his training schedule as he thinks with a smile, I bet he didn't even bother sleeping to get this done. After school, he heads to Dagaba Beach and starts cleaning the beach while using his quirk to make sure he doesn't get cut on anything to avoid having to get a tetanus shot and so something doesn't fall on him. Since Izuku already has muscle from years of training, most of the work is relatively easy for him except when it gets to the bigger objects, which he uses his quirk to find the best grip. After about a month of training, Izuku notices a blonde skeletal man watching him, so Izuku stops what he's doing as he stares at the man. Apparently this prompts the man to ask loudly, what are you doing here, young man? Izuku answers loud enough for him to hear training. The emaciated man makes his way down to the beach and walks up to Izuku. Despite the man's appearance, Izuku keeps his guard up. After all, appearances can be deceiving. The man asks, you're cleaning the beach as training? Izuku answers, yeah. I mean, it's not like anyone else is going to do it, so why not me? Besides, the government isn't going to pay to have someone come down here and get rid of all this trash. The man looks slightly taken aback from Izuku's cynical perspective. The man comments, I'm sure other people would help clean this beach. Izuku replies, probably people who aren't even around here or only see this place from pictures. Izuku knows he's being harsh, but he doesn't know this man and thus doesn't trust him. The man asks, what are you training for? Izuku answers, I'm training to get into the hero course of Yue. The man nods with a hum before he says, you do know that if you're going to be a hero that you're going to have to deal with the public, right? Izuku quips, most underground heroes don't deal with the public. The man thinks for a moment before he nods, that's fair. Izuku then says, besides, do you honestly expect me to automatically trust you after just a few minutes of meeting you? I don't even know your name. The man laughs before he replies, yeah, I guess you're right. The man extends his hand, Toshinori Yagi, just call me Toshinori. Izuku shakes his hand firmly as he replies, Izuku Midoriya. Toshinori comments, so you're thinking of becoming an underground hero? Izuku answers, not really, but it is an option for me if I decide to go that route. I just said that because what you said was a technically false statement. I mean, you don't see Eraserhead in interviews or anything. Toshinori chuckles as he replies, yeah, I guess you're right. So what kind of hero do you want to be? Izuku looks at Toshinori, deciding on whether if he should just tell this man he just met his hopes and dreams. Izuku answers, I want to become the kind of hero that saves people with a smile on my face. Someone who can make people feel safe and inspire people to do good. Toshinori comments, impressed, that's quite the goal you've got there. Izuku replies, yeah, it's just, I know it sounds childish or naive, but I believe that if everyone tried to be at the very least decent with others, that maybe we wouldn't have as much crime as we do. Toshinori asks curiously, what do you mean? Izuku answers, well, think about it. Villains don't just appear, people don't just decide to become villains. I mean, from what I understand, people only become villains because they feel as though they have been wronged, so they go out and seek their own justice. Every villain starts out as a victim of some sort: poverty, homelessness, abandonment, just about any form of suffering. However, that doesn't mean that every victim will become a villain or that a victim can't become a hero. It's just that I think there's just too much suffering in the world, you know. Toshinori pauses to digest Izuku's answer before he says, young Midoriya, you are far too young to be thinking about stuff like that. Izuku looks at Toshinori, slightly offended. Toshinori, I don't think most adults think about this stuff. Do you honestly think Endeavor cares about villains or victims or even civilians? Though he's just get out of my way or I'll set you on fire. He acts more like a villain than some villains I've seen. I mean, last month I saw this guy get called a villain for snatching a purse, yet he didn't even hurt anyone other than cause some property damage. Meanwhile, Endeavor can set a whole building on fire simply because a villain has a hostage and he thinks the ends justify the means. Izuku huffs a sigh from his frustration before he says with disappointment, unfortunately it seems the world wishes to remain blind to that fact. Toshinori looks at Izuku, completely taken by surprise. You really care about others, don't you? Izuku answers with a mirthless laugh, yeah, it's just ... It's so frustrating that people don't try to understand others' feelings or perspectives, if I'm being honest. Izuku looks Toshinori directly in the eye. I think villains are the ones who need to be saved the most. Toshinori stares at Izuku, completely dumbfounded, before Izuku says, looking at the sunset, I know that it's just my opinion and I can't force people to understand or accept it. But maybe if I were to become the kind of hero I want to be, I can bring awareness to people. Toshinori stands there for a moment before he laughs, causing Izuku to look at him oddly. Toshinori comments, you're probably the oldest young person I've ever met. Izuku looks at Toshinori before he begins laughing with him. Yeah, I guess that is pretty funny. Once they stop laughing, Toshinori says, young Midoriya. Izuku looks at Toshinori, who smiles at him. Never lose that heart of yours. Izuku smiles at him as he replies, I'll try, Toshinori. Toshinori then says, well, I should get going. I'll see you later, young Midoriya. Izuku replies as he waves, see you later, Toshinori. After a total of 7 months of cleaning the beach, Izuku finally has it completely cleaned. He sits at the beach staring at the ocean with the sun setting and a content smile. Dad was right ... This place is beautiful. Izuku hears Toshinori call out, young Midoriya. Izuku looks over his shoulder to see Toshinori approaching with a cooler. Hey Toshinori, what you got there? Toshinori sits beside Izuku as he answers, I brought some bottles of water and a couple of sandwiches. Izuku replies, thanks man. Toshinori quips, I don't remember saying they were for you. Izuku half-heartedly punches Toshinori in the shoulder, causing them both to laugh. Toshinori pulls out a sandwich and a bottle of water for Izuku. As they eat watching the sunset, Toshinori comments, you've done a good job, young Midori. Izuku replies, thanks Toshinori. Toshinori says, you know, I don't think I've ever asked, but what is your quirk? Izuku looks at Toshinori as he answers, it's called all formulas. It allows me to analyze anything I see and copy it, such as fighting styles or quirks. Of course, with fighting styles I need to be physically fit. But if I've seen it once, then I can basically do it myself. Fortunately, I've never had to actually fight anybody before. I more or less just dodge until they get tired or until I get an opening to get away. Toshinori comments jokingly, that doesn't sound very heroic. Izuku replies with a laugh, it's called living to fight another day. Toshinori exhales as he says, yeah, but it's easier to say in hindsight rather than in the heat of battle. Izuku stares at Toshinori for a moment. I assume you're speaking from experience. Toshinori answers with a nod, yeah. Izuku looks back out to the sea. I guess it is harder to think logically when lives are on the line. I mean, I've never been in that kind of situation, so I can't possibly know. Still though, if people were to keep on sacrificing themselves, then all they'd do is just leave their loved ones behind, you know. I mean, I get that it's for the greater good and all, but I don't think that makes it any less painful. Toshinori ruffles Izuku's hair as he comments, then I guess you'll just have to make sure to teach your fellow heroes that lesson. Izuku chuckles as he replies, yeah, thanks Toshinori. Toshinori pulls out a couple of popsicles from his cooler as he says, no problem, young Midori. In that moment, Toshinori thinks to himself, should I ask him? He's a great candidate for one for all, but would he even accept it to him if I offered? Toshinori glances over at Izuku, who is simply staring at the view. Toshinori answers to himself, no, he's already got enough on his plate already. It's best if I just let him have this piece. In the following 3 months, the Dagaba Municipal Beach has regained its former glory, which means people start going to the beach now. Of course, that means more trash for Izuku to clean up. Not that he minds, after all, not many people stay long enough to see the sunset, and those that do often end up helping Izuku clean. Izuku could have just left it after he was finished. But after hearing his dad talk about it so fondly, he couldn't possibly allow it to go back to being a dump field. So every week Izuku comes by the beach to clean up whatever trash he finds. Finally, it's the day of the entrance exam for Yui. Izuku stands at the gate as he stares up at the huge building. This is it, my first step to becoming a hero. Izuku takes a step and trips immediately as he thinks apparently it's my last too. However, he doesn't hit the ground. Instead, he's just floating in midair, completely confused, only to hear a cheery voice beside him say, "Sorry about using my quirk on you, but it'd be pretty bad luck if you were to fall on such a big day." Izuku looks to his side to see a brown bob-haired girl with a beaming smile as she straightens Izuku into a standing position before she says release. Gravity returns to Izuku, which makes him stare at the girl in awe. "Is your quirk anti-gravity?" The girl looks at Izuku surprised before she answers something like that. "I just call it zero gravity, it sounds cooler that way." Izuku nods. "Yeah, it does." They begin walking side by side. "So does it only cancel the gravity of certain things, or can it work on anything? How many things can you use it on? What happens if you use it on yourself?" The girl replies, "Easy. I haven't even introduced myself and you're already asking all these questions." Izuku blushes as he says, "Oh, alright, sorry." The girl laughs lightly as she replies, "It's alright. My name's Ochako Uraraka." Izuku introduces himself. "Izuku Midoriya. It's nice to meet you." Uraraka says, "It's nice to meet you too, Midoriya. Anyways, to answer your questions," Izuku says as he waves his hands. "Oh no, you don't have to do that. I just kind of got a bit excited. I just like learning about new quirks." Uraraka replies, "It's fine. But to answer your questions, I can use my quirk on basically anything as long as I touch it with all 5 fingers on either of my hands. I can use it on many different objects, but after a certain weight point I begin to feel nauseous. And if I use it on myself, then I can float for a while, but will eventually begin to feel nauseous." Izuku comments with his hand on his chin, "I see." Uraraka then says, "Well, I'll see you later, Midoriya. Good luck on the test." Izuku waves as Uraraka leaves. "You too." The written test was a breeze since Izuku just used his quirk to analyze each question in its most basic form. After the written test, all the examinees sit in an auditorium where Present Mike explains how the practical portion of the exam is going to go. Present Mike explains that there are 3 robots with points ranked from 1 to 3 with increased difficulty with each rank. However, he is interrupted by a blue-haired boy in glasses who says something about an error which Izuku isn't particularly interested in, since it was likely Present Mike was going to get to the 4th robot before the kid interrupted. Izuku tries to calm his frustrations with a sigh as he thinks how hard is it for people to just be patient. The examinees are then sent to different areas where they will be put into a mock city and fight the robots that were displayed on the screen in the auditorium. Izuku begins doing his stretches to prepare for the fight, but notices Uraraka ahead of the group looking pretty nervous. Izuku goes to make his way to her, but a firm hand clamps down on his shoulder. It looks as though she's trying to concentrate. Izuku looks over his shoulder to see the same boy who interrupted Present Mike. "Are you here to distract us?" Izuku's eye twitches before he inhales through his nose and exhales through his mouth before he answers, No, I am not. I was just going to go over to her to see if I could help calm her down, since it seems as though she's getting stressed out." The boy then says, slightly taken aback, "Oh, my apologies, I didn't know." Izuku hums in acknowledgement before Present Mike calls out, "Go." Izuku rushes off using a speed-based quirk as he hears Present Mike say behind him, "Come on. There are no countdowns in real life, let's get a move on." Izuku sees a group of robots ahead of him. He uses all formulas to calculate their numbers before he stops in place and uses Kamui Wood's arbor. Izuku turns his right arm into wood, which he then sends forth, piercing through the robot's armor, then slings them side to side, completely decimating all the robots in front of him before he pulls his arm back and continues forward. He also uses some strength enhancement quirks, fire-based quirks, even Bakugu's explosion quirk. Meanwhile, in the observation room, Nezu notices Izuku and his use of multiple quirks. He looks over at Toshinori, who doesn't seem surprised. Nezu asks, "So All Might, what do you think about that one with the green hair and freckles?" Toshinori answers nonchalantly he seems to be using his quirk very well. Nezu realizes that Toshinori already knows about the boy if he hasn't outright met him. "You don't think that he's related to him, do you?" Toshinori sighs before he answers, "I know what you're thinking, and I thought the same thing for a while. But young Midoriya isn't anything like him. He's kind, caring, and understanding. I'm not going to say that it's impossible, but at the very least I know that he isn't anything like him." Nezu nods before he comments, "I'll be keeping my eye on him once he gets in." Toshinori chuckles as he says, "I thought you'd say as much, but I'm sure you'll like him." Nezu replies, "We'll see." Izuku takes a breath as he comments, "I think that's enough. I'll go see how everyone else is doing." Izuku rushes over to where his fellow examinees are still fighting robots and takes that time to analyze all of their quirks. Izuku comments, "Not bad, but they could use some work." Suddenly the ground begins to rumble and a giant robot, The 0-pointer appears in the distance. Izuku comments, completely taken by surprise. That seems a bit much, don't you think? All of the examinees begin running away in a panic. But Izuku stays. If that thing continues, it's just going to wreak all kinds of destruction. However, Izuku is snapped out of his stupor when he hears a familiar voice call out help. Izuku snaps his attention to the source of the sound as he activates all formulas to see Uraraka underneath some rubble with her hand outstretched. Izuku doesn't hesitate for a moment as he uses a speed quirk to rush to her side. He then uses Uraraka's zero gravity to lift the rubble off of her, then picks her up bridal style and runs towards the exit. It all happens so fast that Uraraka doesn't even realize she's being carried until Izuku is putting her down against a wall near the other examinees. Wait here. Izuku rushes towards the 0-pointer, compounding several strength and speed quirks which he uses to launch himself into the air and punches the 0-pointer in the face, sending it tumbling backwards as explosions go off inside of it. Izuku then uses zero gravity on himself to negate his descent, then uses arbor on a nearby light pole to pull himself down. Once he reaches ground level, he places his hands together, release. Izuku's gravity returns, but unfortunately due to the use of the quirk he throws up. Izuku comments as he wipes his mouth, I'm going to need to train myself for that quirk. Izuku heaves out a sigh of exhaustion as he begins walking towards the exit where his fellow examinees stare in awe. Izuku ignores the stares and heads over to Uraraka, who is simply staring at him dumbfounded. Are you alright? Uraraka stares for a moment longer before she shakes her head with a blush and answers, why yeah, I am just. Uraraka takes a breath. I think I just have a sprained ankle. At this point they hear an elderly voice say, alright, coming through. Recovery girl comes out of the crowd of examinees as she sees Uraraka leaning against the wall and Izuku with stars in his eyes. Are you two alright? Uraraka answers with a sheepish smile, yeah, but I think I may have sprained my ankle. Recovery girl makes her way to Uraraka's side as she checks her ankle before kissing it and handing her some gummies. Here, make sure to eat these. They'll help you regain some of your stamina. What about you, Sonny? Are you hurt anywhere? Izuku answers as he shakes his head. Oh, no ma'am, I'm fine, didn't even get a scratch. Recovery girl then says, well, I'm going to check over you anyways since you seem to be rather reckless. Izuku replies, sorry. As recovery girl is checking Izuku over, Uraraka asks, how did you do that? Izuku looks at her with a confused look. I mean, I saw you use a speed quirk in the beginning, then a wood quirk, then a strength quirk, and even my quirk. Izuku chuckles as recovery girl eyes him suspiciously. My quirk allows me to copy other people's quirks with just a look. But I can even copy what I see too, like martial arts and stuff like that. I call it all formulas. Uraraka comments, that's so cool. You can literally do anything. Izuku chuckles, why yeah, I guess I can. But I still get the backlashes of the quirks I use, which is why I train my body to withstand every new quirk I find. I'm going to need some time before I can get full control over your quirk. Recovery girl comments as she finishes checking him over. Well, it looks like you aren't hurt anywhere, but don't let this go to your head, you got lucky this time. Izuku nods in understanding. Yes, ma'am, thank you. Recovery girl hands Izuku some gummies despite still being suspicious of him. Is anyone else here injured? Izuku and Uraraka stand up together. Uraraka asks, so, how do you think you did? Izuku answers, I got about 102 points. Uraraka giggles, that's an odd number. Izuku quips, it's actually quite even. Uraraka laughs at Izuku's joke. Izuku then says, in all honesty, I just wanted to get 100 points, but the only nearby robot at the moment was a 3-pointer, so I just took it down before I went to see how everyone else was doing. Uraraka comments, I think I got about 42 points. She then says nervously, I hope it was enough to get in. Izuku replies, there's no point in worrying about it. You did the best that you could do. All you can do is wait for the results. If you ever feel nervous or anxious, just start doing some exercises, like push-ups or sit-ups. It'll help take your mind off of it. Uraraka then asks, but what if I don't get in? Izuku answers, then you'll just have to win in the sports festival. Uraraka looks at Izuku shocked before he says with a smile, if you want I could help with your training. I think I'd be an alright trainer. Uraraka smiles as she replies, thanks Midoriya. Afterwards, the two of them exchange numbers with each other. On his way home, Izuku stops in sudden realization, I made a friend. Once Izuku gets home, he calls out, Mom, I'm home. Inko asks as she goes to meet him, how was the exam, sweetie? Izuku answers, it went well. The written test was easy and I got 102 points in the practical portion. Inko smiles proudly as she hugs Izuku, oh sweetie, I'm so proud of you. Izuku hugs back as he chuckles, thanks Mom. Izuku pulls back as he says, oh by the way, I actually made a friend. Inko replies curiously, oh. Izuku answers with a nod, yeah, her name's Ochako Uraraka. Inko then says with a teasing smile, oh, your friend is a her? Huh. Izuku groans, it's not like that Mom, we just met. Inko replies, of course it starts like that. Do you think your father and I just fell in love at first sight? Izuku groans out again, Mom. Inko giggles as she says, patting Izuku on the shoulder, I'm just teasing Izuku, just make sure you use protection. Izuku yells out, thoroughly embarrassed, "Mom." And Ko just laughs as she makes her way to the kitchen. Dinner is almost ready. Izuku makes his way to the bathroom where he turns on the sink and splashes water on his face. God, that was embarrassing. Izuku then says after a thought passes his mind, maybe I shouldn't tell Dad about Uraraka. After dinner he goes to his room where he calls Hisashi. Hey Dad. Hisashi replies, hello son. How were the exams? Izuku answers they went well. Hisashi comments with a smirk in his voice, I heard you managed to find yourself a girlfriend. Izuku groans out, Father, why have you forsaken me? Hisashi cackles on the other line, sorry Izuku, but I had to do it. In any case, I'm proud of you, even if this wasn't the kind of thing I wanted for you. I'm glad you're following your dreams and hope you'll be able to achieve them. Izuku smiles as he replies, thanks Dad. So how is work going? Hisashi sighs, it's going. Honestly, I sometimes wonder how I can deal with such troublesome people. Izuku chuckles, well, at least you make a lot of money. Hisashi replies, this is true. After a moment of silence, Izuku says, hey Dad. Hisashi hums back, when do you think I'll see you again? Hisashi sighs as he answers, I'm not sure Izuku. I know I haven't been the most present father and I'm sorry that I haven't always been there for you. I just want you and your mother to have an easier life than I had. Izuku replies, I know Dad, I just miss you. Hisashi says with a choked up voice, I miss you too son. I truly wish I could be there for you and your mother. Tears prick at Izuku's eyes, I know Dad. Hisashi says, I love you Izuku. Izuku replies, I love you too Dad. They both hang up before Izuku falls across his bed where he gazes up at his ceiling. Izuku wipes the tears from his eyes before he says, I'm on my way to becoming a hero. Izuku looks to his side where his All Might poster is hanging with a beaming smile, I hope I can become a hero just like you All Might. A week later, Izuku receives a letter from Yui where he is given the results of his test as well as his school badge in order to get into Yui. April 1st arrives sooner than expected for Izuku, but he isn't any less excited that he's finally attending the school of his dreams. Izuku walks through the halls looking around. 1A, here it is. Izuku takes a deep breath before he opens the door to see Bakugo and the blue-haired boy from the entrance exam arguing. Izuku sighs as he massages his forehead again with this. Suddenly he hears a familiar voice call out, Midoriya. Izuku looks behind him to see Uraraka before he smiles brightly, hey Uraraka. Uraraka replies with her own smile, looks like we're in the same class? Huh. Izuku comments, yeah, I guess so. Izuku and Uraraka make their way into the classroom. Uraraka comments, I almost didn't pass and that was beyond stressful. Izuku replies, but you did pass, so there's nothing to worry about. Besides, I did promise to help train you in case if you didn't pass. Uraraka then says after thinking for a moment, yeah, I guess you're right. Suddenly the blue-haired boy appears before them, excuse me. Izuku and Uraraka jump at the sudden interruption. My name is Tenya, and I wish to apologize for underestimating you during the practical portion of the entrance exam. It seems you saw through the hidden point system that they had in place. Izuku feels a hint of frustration, but hides it perfectly. I didn't know or figure out there was another point system. I saved Uraraka because she's my friend and needed my help. Uraraka blushes slightly as Ida stares at Izuku shocked before they hear a tired voice, if you're here to make friends then you can go ahead and leave. Everyone turns to the door to see a man in a yellow sleeping bag on the floor. As the man gets out of his sleeping bag, everyone goes to their seats. The black-haired, scruffy-looking man comments as he makes his way to the front of the class, it took you all 8 seconds to get to your seat. That won't do. Time is precious, so I expect everyone to work hard on reducing that time. The man introduces himself as he pulls out a cardboard box. My name is Shota Aizawa, and I'm going to be your homeroom teacher from now on. Put these on and meet me outside. As Aizawa leaves, the students get up and pick out their gym uniforms before they head to the changing rooms. Once they're all outside, Aizawa says, today we'll be doing a quirk assessment test to see where everyone stands. Uraraka asks, but what about the entrance ceremony? Aizawa answers, Yui prides itself on allowing its teachers the freedom to do whatever they want. Heroes often don't have time for trivial nonsense such as ceremonies, which is why we're out here instead of in there. Aizawa calls out as he tosses a softball. Midoriya. Izuku catches the ball as Aizawa asks, what was your distance throw in junior high? Izuku answers, I think it was about 70 meters or so. Aizawa points to a circle behind him. I want you to toss that ball as far as you can using your quirk. Izuku makes his way to the circle before he uses zero gravity and a composition of multiple strength enhancement quirks, throwing the ball out of the atmosphere. Aizawa holds up his phone which monitors the distance of the ball, which shows infinity to the entire class who stare in awe. Aizawa comments, this is the kind of expectations Yui has for you. Students then begin commenting on how excited they are and how fun the assessment seems, which apparently was the wrong thing to say. Aizawa asks, sounds like fun, huh? Aizawa states to the entire class, fine then. New rule, whoever comes in last place will be expelled. The class cries out in confusion, huh? Uraraka comments, you can't do that, we just got here. A pink-haired girl with pink skin adds, yeah, that's not fair. Aizawa replies, not fair. You think that floods, earthquakes, and other natural disasters are fair? Aizawa continues, there are plenty of things in this world that aren't fair. That's why it's a hero's job to combat against that unfairness. If you all want to stay here, then you're going to have to give it your all, plus ultra style. Some of the students gulp from being intimidated while others grin at the challenge, and a few who don't seem interested. Izuku places first in every test presented to him by using multiple quirks, which other students seem to catch on to rather quickly. However, one person catches Izuku's attention after the third test. Izuku asks a purple-haired student who has bags under his eyes that could rival Aizawa's, hey, how come you haven't used your quirk yet? The boy answers with a glare, because it's not flashy like yours. Izuku can feel the animosity, but knows that it isn't specifically directed towards him. Okay then, what is it? The boy quirks an eyebrow, seemingly confused. It's brainwashing. If someone responds to me, then I can essentially control their mind. Izuku asks, somewhat confused, okay, so why haven't you used it yet? The boy replies, in what? Just out myself as a villain for everyone to make fun of. Izuku says, repeating his father's words, if they're going to make fun of you for your quirk, then their opinions shouldn't matter to you. The boy blinks at Izuku, taken completely by surprise, before Izuku offers with a smile, in any case, you can ask me to take your place in the assessment if you want. I don't mind. The boy asks suspiciously, why should I trust you? Izuku answers solemnly, because I know how it feels to face against the entire world all on your own. The boy looks at Izuku in shock as he continues, I know how it feels to be in that cold, dark, and lonesome place. Izuku smiles brightly at the boy in front of him. That's why I don't want you to continue suffering there. The boy looks at Izuku with a bewildered look. Clearly he wasn't expecting Izuku to understand where he was coming from. The boy regains his composure before he introduces himself, Hitoshi Shinsu. Izuku replies, Izuku Midoriya, it's nice to meet you. Hitoshi smiles, same here. For the rest of the tests, Izuku does not only his tests, but also Shinsu's from his brainwashing. Throughout the assessment, Izuku uses all formulas to analyze his classmates' quirks in order to build up his arsenal. By the end of the assessment, the one to come in last place is Hagakure, who falls to her knees and tries to hold back her sobs. Izuku immediately makes his way to her to try and comfort her, along with Uraraka, before Aizawa comments, by the way, I lied about the expulsion. Majority of the students look at Aizawa before he breaks out into a creepy grin. It was just a logical ruse to get you all to do your best. Aizawa then says as he leaves, your syllabi will be waiting on my desk. Make sure to pick one up before you all leave. Hagakure begins crying in relief as Izuku and Uraraka comfort her. Hey, it's all right, you're going to be okay. Yaoyorozu walks over as she produces a handkerchief. I'm sorry, I should have said something earlier. I figured he wouldn't expel us on our first day, but I had no idea that so many would take it seriously. Izuku thinks to himself, he wasn't lying when he threatened to expel us, but he also wasn't lying when he said none of us were going to be expelled, which means that he saw enough potential in all of us not to expel any of us. Izuku rubs soothing circles on Hagakure's back as she wipes the tears from her face with the handkerchief. With a smile, Izuku says, it's okay, Hagakure, you're not going anywhere. You're going to be a hero. Hagakure seemingly turns to look up at Izuku to see his smile before she says with a sniffle, thanks. Izuku replies, you're welcome. Izuku helps Hagakure up before they all head inside to grab their syllabi. As they walk back to their homeroom, Yaoyorozu asks curiously, by the way, how were you able to use so many powers? Izuku answers with Uraraka on his right and Shinsu on his left, my quirk. All formulas allows me to analyze everything I see and copy it. This can be anything like the structural makeup of an object, which is helpful for your quirk, as well as schoolwork, martial arts, and copying other people's quirks. Ada asks incredulously, you mean the reason you were able to use so many powers is because you've copied other people's quirks? Izuku answers as a pit grows in his stomach waiting to be rejected, which Shinsu picks up on immediately. Yeah, that about sums it up. Everyone remains silent for a moment before Hagakure asks, does that mean you can copy my quirk? Izuku opens his mouth to answer, but immediately closes it, realizing he doesn't know the answer to that. I don't know. Izuku explains, I can only copy what I can see, but since you're invisible, I can't see you. However, since it's part of your quirk, one would assume that my quirk should be able to copy it, but for some reason I couldn't, unless I require another quirk in order to see you, like a heat vision quirk or something like that. Izuku continues to mumble up a storm as he begins theorizing before Shinsu says, Midori. Izuku snaps out of his trance to see everyone still staring at him before he bashfully asks, I was mumbling? Wasn't I? Hagakure answers, yeah, but don't worry, it was kind of cute. Izuku blushes before he asks us, so you don't think I'm a villain? Yaoyorozu answers, your quirk is amazing and is quite versatile, but I don't see why you would think we would assume you were a villain. Ada adds with chopping motions, agreed. From what I have seen, you have done nothing warranting to be called a villain. Uraraka nods emphatically, yeah, I mean you saved my life. Hagakure waves her arms around, plus you're too cute to be a villain. Shinsu comments nonchalantly, you already know my answer. Izuku begins to tear up as he replies with a heartfelt smile, thanks guys. That means a lot. They all smile at Izuku as they reply, you're welcome Midoriya. Yaorazu produces another handkerchief for Izuku, which he takes gratefully. The following day proceeds like a relatively normal school day with a few hero-based classes instead of other normal school classes. Finally, the last class of the day, Foundational Heroics. The students of 1 wait anxiously for their teacher to arrive. Suddenly, they all hear a booming voice from the hall. I am here. All Might appears at the door with his cape billowing behind him, coming through the door like a normal person. The class bursts with excitement at the thought of being taught by the number 1 hero, All Might. All Might states as he makes his way to the front of the class, today we'll be doing. All Might shows a giant flash card as he calls out battle trials. All Might then says as the students get even more excited, however, before we start you're going to need your hero suits. All Might pulls out a remote which he clicks a button, causing suitcases to appear from the nearby wall with the students' seat numbers on the front of them. All Might then says change it to these, then meet me at Training Grounds Beta. All Might rushes out of the classroom as the students grab their suitcases. Uraraka comments, I'm so excited to try out my costume. Izuku replies with a smile, same here. The class goes to their designated changing rooms where they get into their hero costumes. Izuku's costume looks like a mage knight's armor. It has single chest plate attached to leather, allowing for easy maneuverability, while the rest of his costume is made of cloth that is green with teal accents. He's also wearing leather boots which give him traction regardless of terrain, and a white cape that hangs from his shoulders with a single steel shoulder plate on his left shoulder. As Izuku walks out onto the training grounds, Uraraka waves at him, hey Midoriya. Izuku walks over to her as she comments, wow, you look amazing. Izuku replies with a blush, thanks Uraraka. Why, you look good too. Uraraka comments dismissively, yeah, I just wish it wasn't so tight, you know. After noticing what Uraraka meant, Izuku blushes even deeper. Shinsu asks as he walks up behind Izuku, see something you like. Izuku blushes even deeper before he turns to Shinsu with a mildly angry expression, it's not funny Shinsu. Shinsu, who is in a similar outfit as Aizawa, chuckles much to Uraraka's confusion. All Might comments with a thumbs up, they say the clothes make the pros and you young men and women definitely look like hero material. All Might then explains, today you're all going to be paired up into teams of 2, then you're going to be drawn as either hero or villain. The hero's job is to either capture the villains or get the bomb before the time runs out. Meanwhile, the villain's job will be protecting the bomb until time runs out or capture the heroes. You'll all be teamed up randomly before All Might can continue. Ida asks as he raises his hand, excuse me sir, but wouldn't it be more efficient if we were teamed up with people who complement our abilities? Izuku answers, somewhat frustrated at Ida's impatience, in the real world you won't always be teamed up with people you inherently get along with. This kind of thing is to get us familiar with that kind of experience. Ida nods in understanding, I see. All Might then says, very well then. Let's get this started. Izuku gets teamed up with Uraraka, who bounces beside him. Wow, I can't believe we're on the same team. It's almost like destiny or something. Izuku recalls his mom and dad teasing him, which causes him to blush and look away. Why yeah, I guess so. Uraraka tilts her head in confusion but doesn't say anything. All Might reaches into 2 boxes. One says hero and the other says villain. The first one's upper. All Might pulls out a white ball that says A and a black ball that says D. These guys. Izuku looks to his left where he sees Bakugo's glare. At first it catches him off guard since he wasn't expecting Bakugo to already be glaring at him, but eventually hardens a glare of his own. All Might then leads the 2 teams away while handing them a map of the building. All Might says you'll be given a few minutes to prepare before the assignment begins, so I suggest you 4 start making a plan. Izuku and Uraraka wait outside while Bakugo and Ida head inside. Uraraka asks, so what's going on between you and Bakugo? Izuku looks at Uraraka as she comments, I mean, he doesn't seem to like you very much since was glaring at you all day yesterday and all day today too. Izuku sighs before he answers, Bakugo and I have known each other ever since we were born. We used to be friends before his quirk came in. After that he got more aggressive and started talking about how he was better than me since I was a late bloomer. He and other kids would call me quirkless, useless, worthless. They even came up with a nickname too. Deku. Izuku explains, after my quirk came in everyone started calling me a villain since I could copy and use the quirks of everyone around me. My dad told me that people fear those who are stronger than them, which is why almost everyone saw me as a villain and everyone who didn't eventually agreed with them for fear of getting bullied themselves. Izuku sighs as he looks down. All I could do was pretend like what they said didn't hurt. Put on a strong, brave face despite it all. Uraraka looks at Izuku sadly, before she says with an encouraging smile, well you know what, I like Deku. It'd make for a great hero name, like a you can do it vibe. Izuku looks at Uraraka with a surprised look before he smiles as he replies, thanks Uraraka. Uraraka beams, you're welcome Midoriya. Izuku says as he blushes slightly and averts his eyes. You can call me Deku if you want. Uraraka asks, are you sure? Izuku nods, yeah, it's fine. Uraraka smiles before she asks, so, what's the plan? Izuku answers as he regains his composure. Well, considering what I know of Bakugo, it's likely he'll think we'll go in through the top since your quirk is zero gravity and I can copy your quirk. So instead of going from the top, I'll use Gyro's quirk, earphone jack, in order to locate the bomb. After that, we'll go to that floor's window and go in through there. Uraraka nods before she asks, okay, but how are we going to get in? Izuku answers as he raises his right hand, turning it into wood. I met Kamui Woods about a year ago and managed to copy his quirk, so I'll use that in order to open the window for us to get into the building. Ada will likely be guarding the bomb, so we'll need to distract him. Uraraka replies with a smile, got it. Once the match begins, Izuku does just as he planned to do. He sticks an earphone jack into a nearby wall to pick up the vibrations. Bakugo is waiting on the roof just as Izuku predicted, while Ida is in a room with the bomb on the opposite end of the building on the 4th floor. Izuku takes out the earphone jack as he says to Uraraka, okay, we're going to go into the 3rd floor window. The bomb is on the 4th. Since Bakugo is on the roof, he'll likely hear us if we try to get in through the 4th floor window. Uraraka nods in understanding. All right, got it. Izuku and Uraraka both use zero gravity. Uraraka holds onto Izuku as he uses a boar in order to catch onto the 3rd floor window. Izuku opens the window as gently and as quietly as possible, allowing both him and Uraraka to sneak in without being heard. Afterwards, they sneak their way to the 4th floor and to the door of the room where Ada is guarding the bomb. Izuku motions with his hands to Uraraka on the other wall to float herself to the ceiling, which she nods to before doing as he suggested. Izuku makes his way in the room, providing a distraction as Uraraka makes her way along the ceiling. Hey there. Ada looks at Izuku as he says in a mock villain voice, so you have finally arrived, hero. Did you leave your partner behind to get beaten by Bakugo? Izuku answers as Uraraka quietly makes her way along the ceiling. No, she's just hanging out. Ada replies, so you sent her after Bakugo instead of doing so yourself. Do you honestly think you can get the bomb from me? Izuku answers with a grin, I won't have to since we already have the bomb. Ada asks with a questioning tone. Uraraka drops from the ceiling as she grabs the bomb. I got it. All Might calls out, the hero team wins. Ada yells out as he looks at the bomb. No, the weapon? Uraraka giggles as she bounces over to Izuku with a high five. We did it, Deku. That was so easy. Izuku chuckles as he replies, yeah, I guess it was. Ada adds, speaking normally, you two do make a good team. Uraraka replies with a smile, thanks Ada. Suddenly they hear Bakugo and his explosions down the hall. Deku, you bastard. Izuku turns to see Bakugo rushing towards him. Bakugo goes to attack, but Izuku leaps backwards to avoid his attack. All Might says over the intercom, young Bakugo, the match is over, stop immediately. Bakugo yells, ignoring All Might, you think you can just look down on me, you damn nerd. Izuku yells, what the hell are you talking about? Ada calls out, Bakugo, stop this at once. Bakugo yells, shut up, Four Eyes. Bakugo turns his attention back to Izuku. You've been looking down on me for years, thinking you were better than me, but you're not. You're just a stupid, useless, worthless villain. Bakugo charges at Izuku again, but Izuku uses Todoroki's ice to freeze him in place and prevent him from sweating. Bakugo struggles to get free as Izuku approaches with an expressionless face. At no point in my life have I ever looked down on you, Bakugo. Izuku walks past Bakugo as he says, you just couldn't accept me as your equal. Bakugo's eyes go wide as Izuku walks past Uraraka and Ida, who both look at him worried. As Izuku walks into the observation room, All Might asks young Midoriya, are you alright? Izuku answers with an obviously forced smile, yeah, I'm fine. Bakugo just gets on my nerves. It's not something I'm not used to. Izuku's response raises a few eyebrows before Kirishima asks, shouldn't someone free Bakugo or something? Uraraka replies, no, I think the baby needs to cool off. Jiru sputters as she and a few others begin laughing as Ida reprimands with chopping motions, Uraraka, you shouldn't say such things about your classmate even if he was acting childish. Since the attention is no longer focused on Izuku, he makes his way to the back of the class where he leans against the wall. All Might asks young Kirishima, could you go free young Bakugo before he gets hypothermia or frostbite? Kirishima nods, yes sir. Shinsu asks as he stands beside Izuku, are you sure you're alright? Izuku answers, feeling drained, yeah, I don't understand Bakugo. He's just so annoying, and I don't know why he thinks I'm looking down on him. Where does that even come from? Shinsu shrugs before he answers, maybe he's got a superiority complex. Izuku looks at Shinsu as he explains, I mean, considering how he acts, it isn't too hard to believe that no one has ever told him he was less than perfect his whole life. So seeing you being able to surpass him probably makes him think that you're challenging his position as the best. I've only known him for a day and a half and I can already tell that he acts more like Endeavor than All Might. Izuku chuckles as he replies, glad I'm not the only one who sees it. Their conversation catches Todoroki's attention as he thinks to himself, so they see my father for who he really is. The rest of the class proceeds as normal. Izuku doesn't use all formulas since everyone is on a TV screen which he can't analyze. If Izuku uses all formulas on the TV, he would just be able to see the molecular structure of the TV rather than what's happening on the TV. That has always been something that confused Izuku. Until he learned Yaoyorozu's quirk, he hasn't needed to know the molecular structure of anything. Perhaps he can learn more about his quirk while he's here at Yui. As Izuku makes his way to Yui on the third day of school, he notices the press standing outside the school barrier interviewing each student as they pass. Izuku sighs in annoyance. Can these vultures ever just leave well enough alone? As Izuku approaches, one of the reporters stick the microphones in his face. What is it like learning from all? However, before they can finish their question, Izuku answers without missing a beat. Gen Ed. Apparently that's all it took to get the press to leave him alone to make his way into school. The press was the one thing Izuku wasn't looking forward to when it comes to being a hero. He didn't want to be interviewed or have to do talk shows. However, it's likely he'll have to deal with those at some point in his future. Once homeroom starts, Aizawa walks in looking a bit more agitated than usual. I looked over your results from yesterday's exercise. Aizawa glares over at Bakugo. Bakugo, you're not in kindergarten anymore, so either grow up or get out. Bakugo looks down at his desk angrily. Aizawa then says as he looks over the class, today you'll all be doing something that will decide your future school career. The class waits in anticipation. Before he finishes, you'll be deciding your class representatives. The class immediately bursts with people calling out that they want to be the representative. Izuku understands why they would want the position since it would give them leadership experience. However, Izuku isn't the leader type. He's more of a kind of person to get the job done as quickly as possible, as efficient as possible. He would much rather worry about his own work than the work of everyone else. Ada says aloud as he stands up. Enough. Clearly the most efficient way to decide who must be class representatives would be through democratic votes. Suyu comments, but we barely know each other. How are we going to know who to pick if we don't know who we can trust? Ada answers in chopping motions. Simple. Majority of the class will vote for themselves, which means whoever earns more than one vote are the most trustworthy. Izuku raises his hand before he says, I wish to withdraw from the running. Shinsu, who is behind him, raises his hand as he says, same here. Yaoyorozu asks, are you sure you two want to do this? You'll be missing a big opportunity. Izuku answers as he looks at the entire class, I'm not the leader type. I'm more of a groundwork kind of guy. Shinsu adds, I'm just too lazy to be a leader. Izuku snorts as he covers his mouth before Ada says aloud, very well then. Midoriya and Shinsu will not be participating in the running, which will make choosing a representative much easier. By the end of it all, Yaoyorozu ends up as class representative with Ida as vice representative. After the decision has been made, they carry on with their normal school schedule. Once lunchtime rolls around, Uraraka comments, I think you would have made for a great representative, Deku. Ida adds, I agree. I still don't fully understand why you would pass up on such an opportunity, but it isn't my place to question you about it. Izuku replies with a shrug, I just don't want all that responsibility, it'd be too stressful for me. Hagakure asks, are you not good in stressful situations or something? Izuku answers, I wouldn't say that necessarily. But I mean, throughout most of my school life I've never really had friends before, and since this'll be my last school I want to live it up while I can, Everyone except Shinsu looks at Izuku surprised. Yaoyorozu asks, was it really that bad for you? Izuku sighs as they all find a table to sit at. Unfortunately, yes, I used to keep a notebook around to write down my notes on quirks and heroes, but people would keep on stealing them, burning them, or throwing them away, basically destroying all my work. So eventually I just decided to remember everything I saw, which as far as quirks go wasn't too difficult. Fighting styles, on the other hand, was a bit more challenging since I had to actually work out to copy. Uraraka bumps Izuku's shoulder with an encouraging smile. Well, you've got friends now and we'll always be here for you, right? Everyone nods in agreement. Ida adds, if you ever need anyone to talk to, I'll be here to listen. Everyone else replies, same here. Izuku smiles as he says, thanks guys. After that they fall into comfortable conversation about heroes and schoolwork as they eat their lunch. But that peacefulness comes to an abrupt end when an alarm goes off. Ada asks as they all look around wondering what the alarm meant. What's going on? A third year answers with a panicked expression, that's a security level 3 breach. This has never happened before. Before they could ask any more questions, the student runs off. As they exit the lunchroom, they see students trampling over each other to get out. Yaoyorozu comments, we need to calm everyone down. Ada comments as he looks out the window, it looks as though the press are the ones who broke in. Once Izuku hears Ida, he uses Present Mike's quirk, voice stop. The loud yell was enough to get everyone to stop as they turn to see where it came from. Izuku looks at Yaoyorozu with a nod, who says in a commanding tone loud enough for everyone to hear, it's just the press, we are in no danger. Everyone please make your way to the exit in a calm and orderly fashion. Please assist those who are injured. The students follow Yaoyorozu's order as she turns to look at Izuku with a light smile. Thank you for your assistance, Midoriya. Izuku replies with an appreciative smile, you're welcome. However, little did they know that a very dangerous person managed to make their way onto the property. After the evacuation and the press were escorted off the premises, the students are sent back inside to finish their meals before class. While the students walk back into the school, Netsu, Aizawa, and a few other staff members examine the damage to the front gate. The following day in Foundational Heroics, Aizawa stands at the front of the class. Today we'll be going to an off-site facility to help train you all in rescue operations. The class will be led by All Might, myself, and another staff member. Aizawa clicks a button revealing their suitcases. You can either wear your hero costume or your gym uniform, whichever you prefer. Aizawa then says as he leaves the classroom, meet me outside in front of the bus when you're done. They all get up and grab their suitcases before they go to get changed. Once everyone is outside, Ada tries to order the students into 2 filed lines in order to organize their seating. However, Ada's attempt at organizing the students turns out to be fruitless due to free seating, much to his disappointment. Eventually, they fall into comfortable conversation. Izuku is shaken out of his stupor when Tsuyu asks, by the way, Midoriya. Izuku replies as he looks at Tsuyu, why yes, Asui. Tsuyu says, call me Tsuyu. Izuku nods, somewhat confused, oh okay. Tsuyu comments, your quirk is pretty amazing. From what I can tell, you can copy just about any quirk, right? Izuku nods essentially. Tsuyu asks curiously, so does that mean you can copy All Might's quirk? Izuku answers, I can, but I can only copy a quirk if I've seen it being used. I also can't copy a quirk if I can't actively see it, like Hagakura's. Tsuyu nods, I see. So as long as All Might doesn't use his quirk in front of you, then you can't copy it. Izuku nods as he replies, right. Ashido asks, what about my quirk? Can you copy it? Izuku answers, since your quirk is mutant-based, it's pretty much always active, which means I can copy it. Transformation and emitter-type quirks are the only ones I would have to wait in order to copy, since they're not constantly being used. Ashido then says, confused, but I'm not even using my quirk right now. Izuku replies, yes, but on the molecular level your body is constantly at the ready to produce acid whenever you may need it. Emitter and transformation types only react on command, which is why I can't copy a quirk without seeing it in action. Tsuyu comments, aside from you, the most powerful students in class would be Todoroki and Bakugo. Kaminari adds, yeah, but Bakugo won't be popular because of his crappy attitude. Bakugo yells, what did you say, Sparky? Kaminari replies, come on dude, we haven't even known each other for a full week and we already know what you're like. Bakugo yells, why don't you come over here and say that? Izuku sighs as he thinks to himself, it's going to be one of those days, isn't it? Aizawa leads the class off the bus and into the giant dome building, where they see multiple other facilities inside that seem to represent different environments. As they're looking around, the space hero 13 walks up to them. Hello students, my name is 13 and this here is my facility, the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ for short. Hiroraka begins fangirling over meeting her favorite hero as 13 explains, I had this facility built to help prepare you all for any and all dangerous situations that would require rescue. However, I'm also here to explain to you all that your quirks can be just as deadly as they are helpful. 13's last statement manages to stop the class in their place as they explain, my quirk is called Black Hole. It helps in clearing debris and other obstructions, but it can also be used to kill. 13 then says this is something that every hero must be aware of when they enter the field of heroics, because if they aren't, then they could very well do more harm than good. That is why you're all here, to learn how to use your quirks to help others in a safe and orderly manner. The class applaud 13's speech as Aizawa walks over to 13 and whispers something to them. Whatever the question was, 13 answers by holding up 3 fingers. Izuku thinks to himself, where's All Might? Aizawa answers as he turns to the rest of the class. Unfortunately, or fortunately depending on your personal opinions, All Might is unable to attend today. So it'll just be myself and 13 who will be supervising your exercises. As soon as Aizawa finishes his sentence, a black and purple mass appears in the center of the USJ. Kirishima asks as he takes a step forward, what's going on down there? Aizawa stops him by raising his hand as people begin pouring out of the black-purple mass. Stay back. Those are villains. Izuku uses all formulas as he analyzes the situation. It looks as though there's roughly 40 villains down there. 17 of them are mutation types, and the rest are unknown. The one in the black and purple mist seems to have a warp quirk, which explains how he was able to get in here. But it seems as though he would have had to have known the exact coordinates in order to use his quirk. Aizawa comments as he looks over his shoulder at Izuku. Thanks, Midori. Aizawa pulls up his yellow goggles, which Izuku recognizes immediately. Aizawa, you can't go down and face them on your own. You specialize in surprise attacks, not a full-on battle. Aizawa replies as he looks back at Izuku. You'll never get far if you're just a one-trick pony. Aizawa leaps down the steps as Izuku thinks worriedly, please be safe, Aizawa. 13 then says as they try to lead the students out, come on, you need to evacuate now. The students head for the door, but are stopped by the purple mist villain who stands before them. We apologize for intruding on this haven of heroes. However, we have come here with a specific goal in mind. The mist villain looks around as he comments, I see that All Might isn't with you. 13 says as they get between the villain and the students as they pop open a cap from their index finger. Stand back everyone. I'll take care of this. However, before 13 could use their quirk, both Bakugo and Kirishima jump in to attack the villain. The attack had no effect on the villain, which gives him an opening to swallow up the students. Now then, be gone. The next thing Izuku knows, he's falling headfirst into a giant pool of water. As Izuku sinks into the water, he opens his eyes as he uses all formulas to see if there are any nearby villains. Unfortunately, it seems as though his intuition was right since he sees a shark mutant quirk user quickly approaching him. No hard feelings, kid. Izuku copies his quirk as he narrowly dodges the villain's attack before Tsuyu swoops in and kicks the villain mid-air. Tsuyu wraps her tongue around Izuku's stomach as she pulls him and Shinsu to a nearby ship for safety. Izuku comments as Tsuyu lifts him and Shinsu up to the boat. Thanks for the save as Tsuyu. Tsuyu croaks as she replies, you're welcome, Midoriya. Shinsu asks as he stands up, how did the villains get in here? Izuku answers they only needed one villain to get in, the warp villain. They probably used yesterday's break-in as a distraction. If they were expecting All Might to be here, then they might have his schedule, which would explain why they're here. Tsuyu comments that makes sense, but why would they purposely seek out All Might? Shinsu replies they probably see All Might as a challenge. The higher you stand, the harder you fall. Izuku says thoughtfully that does seem like something villains would think. Plus, I don't think they would try to pick a fight with All Might unless they had a fighting chance. Tsuyu asks, so you think they have someone who can beat All Might? Izuku answers it's possible. In any case, we need to find a way back to safety away from these villains. Shinsu asks, could you use the warp villain's quirk? Izuku answers as he shakes his head, unfortunately no. I'm not familiar with warp or teleportation quirks since this is the first one I've ever copied. If I were to try to use it without any prior training, then I could end up getting us killed. Suddenly, a massive water-like claw cuts through the boat, causing it to start sinking. Tsuyu comments we should probably come up with a plan quick. Izuku looks over the edge of the boat to see several villains and begins copying every quirk he sees. Fortunately, he is able to copy the quirk that had just attacked the boat. Izuku replies as he looks back at Tsuyu and Shinsu, I've got an idea, but I'm going to have to get in the water. Shinsu asks incredulously, are you crazy? Izuku answers yes. Izuku jumps into villain-infested waters. Looks like someone has a death wish. The villains all start swimming towards Izuku, but Izuku summons a giant water claw as he grabs all the villains rushing towards him. Izuku raises the claw up in the air before he uses Todoroki's ice to freeze the water claw before letting it go, causing it to sink. But fortunately, it is large enough to give the villains air to breathe. Izuku calls out to the boat, all right guys, let's get out of here. Tsuyu, grab a hold of Shinsu so that we can get out of here quickly. Tsuyu replies, got it, ribbit. Tsuyu wraps her tongue around Shinsu's midsection as she jumps off the boat as Izuku uses a swimming quirk to swim away. Once they arrive at the edge of the water, they see Aizawa taking down multiple villains as he takes them all on. Izuku says quietly, all right, let's see if we can lessen Aizawa's burdens. Shinsu replies, you can't honestly think that's a good idea. Tsuyu adds, the best thing to do is to get to safety. We aren't trained to fight villains. Izuku replies as he looks at them, I know. But if they have someone who can beat All Might, then Aizawa won't stand a chance. Neither Tsuyu or Shinsu could argue with Izuku's logic, but Tsuyu simply suggests, how about you use your quirk on the villains to see if they actually do have someone who can beat All Might. Izuku looks at Tsuyu somewhat surprised that he didn't think of that before he says, all right. Izuku uses all formulas as he looks over every villain he can see. It seems as though most of the villains who are currently fighting have pretty amazing quirks, but they lack any experience in fighting. Izuku guesses that most of the villains in the area are just random street thugs and not real villains. But Izuku stops when he sees a bird-beaked villain in the back. Izuku says quietly with wide eyes, what the fuck? Tsuyu asks slightly worried, what is it? What do you see? Izuku answers as he keeps looking at the bird-beaked villain that thing has 4 quirks. Shinsu asks wide-eyed in shock, 4 quirks? How is that possible? Izuku answers it shouldn't be possible. No one should have more than 1 quirk. Izuku explains as he looks at his comrades, Todoroki's quirk isn't 2 quirks, it's 2 abilities in 1 quirk. My quirk operates similarly. It shouldn't be possible for anyone to hold more than 1 quirk unless Tsuyu asks unless what? Izuku answers with fear and disgust in his voice, unless that thing was genetically altered. The implication to Izuku's answer stuns Tsuyu and Shinsu for a moment before Shinsu asks hesitantly, what quirks does he have? Izuku gulps before he answers, super speed, super strength, regeneration, and shock absorption. Tsuyu and Shinsu both stare wide-eyed at Izuku before he says, looking at them, you two need to get to safety now. Tsuyu asks, what about you? Izuku answers as he looks back at the battle, I'll do what I can to help Aizawa. Shinsu argues, if you do that, then they'll send that thing to kill you. Izuku replies with determination, if I don't go, then they'll kill Aizawa. When Izuku gets out of the water to rush, he sees the leader with the hand on his face disintegrating Aizawa's arm. Izuku yells out in desperation as he sees the beaked villain behind him. Aizawa, get away now. Aizawa looks over his shoulder to see the beaked villain bringing down its fist, sending Aizawa sprawling to the ground. Izuku stares in horror along with Tsuyu and Shinsu as the villain lifts Aizawa's head before smashing it into the concrete repeatedly. Suddenly Izuku hears his voice in his head in a dark tone. Death is all around you, but it doesn't matter, does it? Izuku grabs his head with both of his hands as he looks down with shooting pain going through his head. No. The voice continues, the world is yours to take. All you have to do is open up, release it ... and kill. Izuku shakes his head, drawing the leader and his classmates' attention. No. The voice finishes till everything disappears before your eyes. Izuku lets out a blood-curdling scream as he looks to the sky, with all formulas activating with a red hue added to his eyes as his scream turns into maniacal laughter. The leader asks to himself, what's wrong with this brat? Izuku, or whatever is possessing Izuku, looks forward at the villains before him, weakling. Your molecules will scatter like sand. A red beam shoots out of Izuku's eyes, which the leader jumps down to avoid the attack. But the ground behind him explodes from the impact, creating a huge trench. Izuku's voice sounds darker as it reverberates throughout the entire facility. Monster, devil, god, hero, call me what you will. You'll cease to exist soon enough. The leader yells out in desperation at the beaked villain. Naomu, kill this brat. The beaked villain. Naomu rushes Izuku as his friends yell, Izuku, get out of there. The Naomu punches Izuku, but Izuku absorbs the shock of the attack without flinching as he says, raising his hand to the Naomu's face, analyze existence and release. Izuku blows up the Naomu's upper half as it begins to disintegrate. First comes destruction. I create nothing, forgive nothing, save nothing. I just erase. Completely. The mist villain reappears just in time to see the Naomu finish disintegrate into nothing. What's going on here, Shigaraki? The leader replies in pure fear, Kirigiri, we need to leave now. Izuku raises his hand with a blue pentagram on his palm to attack just as Kirigiri swallows Shigaraki and disappear. Izuku shoots a red beam from his hand that further destroys his surroundings. Afterwards, Izuku begins laughing maniacally as he looks back to the sky as Tsuyu and Shinsu stare on in overwhelming fear from Izuku's destruction. But Izuku's laugh is cut short as he doubles over, breathing heavily with wide eyes. All formulas is no longer in Izuku's eyes as he desperately breathes before looking to his right to see Aizawa's only visible red glowing eye. Izuku begins to tear up as he begins trembling, looking back at the ground where his hands are placed. IJ just killed someone. Shinsu gets out of the water as he cautiously makes his way to Izuku. Midoriya. Izuku looks at his hands as they tremble, crying, I'm a monster. Izuku rests his forehead on the concrete floor as he whispers between sobs, they were wrong. Izuku heaves out as Shinsu approaches. I am and not a V villain. I am worse. Shinsu places a hand on Izuku's shoulder as he says sympathetically, Izuku, but before Shinsu can say anything, the door at the top of the steps bursts open as they hear a familiar never fear, because I am here. Izuku recalls all the times that voice and those words would fill him with hope, but now all he can feel is despair and pain as he cries out. All Might lands at the center of the plaza where Shinsu is trying to comfort Izuku. What happened here, young Shinsu? Shinsu looks at Izuku as he curls in on himself as if in fear of being attacked. I can't say. All Might asks as he looks around at the villains who are all unconscious. What happened to all the villains? Tsuyu answers as she gets out of the water and slowly approaches. Aizawa took most of them down, but T2 of them managed to escape. All Might nods in understanding before he asks, looking at Izuku, what happened to young Midori? Shinsu looks at Tsuyu with a mix of emotions, hope, despair, anxiousness, fear, practically begging with his eyes for the right answer. Tsuyu answers hesitantly, I don't know, sir. All Might replies, I see. I want you two to carry young Midoriya to the entrance while I take Aizawa. Shinsu nods as he says, yes, sir. Shinsu helps Izuku to his feet while Tsuyu hesitates to go near him, but complies anyway from All Might's order. Once they reach to the top of the stairs, Uraraka rushes over to them, worried. Oh my god, Deku. What happened? Uraraka reaches out to touch Izuku, but he backs away to avoid her touch while looking down, still crying. Shinsu answers with a pained expression, I don't think we should talk about it just yet. All Might says as Shinsu leads Izuku off to the side. I'll head to other areas of the facility to take down the remaining villains. I want everyone here to help 13 and Aizawa while I'm gone, understand? The students excluding Izuku, Shinsu, and Tsuyu answer, yes, sir. Izuku sits against the wall with his head buried in his knees as he cries with Shinsu beside him, who looks at him genuinely worried. Uraraka walks over to them with her hand raised, wanting to help, but not knowing how to, only for Shinsu to reply by shaking his head. Uraraka stops as she lowers her hand with tears pricking at her eyes in frustration since she doesn't know how to help her friend when he needs it most. Meanwhile, Izuku stews in his memories of when his quirk first came and when he was called a villain and a freak, how people were scared of him and how they would avoid him at all costs, looking at him with fear and hatred. Izuku thinks to himself, you can't be a hero. How could you ever hope to be one when you just killed someone in cold blood? You don't deserve to be a hero. You don't even deserve to live after what you've done. Izuku begins crying harder from how much he hates himself and realizing that he's a monster while Shinsu tries to soothe him by rubbing circles on his back. Shinsu wants to tell him that it'll be okay, that Izuku will be okay, but would he even listen? Would he even believe him? How can Shinsu possibly understand what Izuku is going through if he himself has never killed someone before? All Shinsu knows is that Izuku is drowning in his own self-hatred and there's nothing he can do to help him. After a while, Izuku stops crying. Not because he's feeling better, but because he no longer has the energy to continue crying. So he simply continues staring down between his legs with a dead look in his eyes as the rest of the heroes and police show up along with him. The villains are taken away as the heroes check over each student. Present Mike asks as he walks over to Izuku and Shinsu with a worried expression since they're sitting away from everyone else. Are you two alright? Shinsu opens his mouth before he sighs and answers solemnly, no, I don't think we are. Present Mike knows what Shinsu means as he crouches down in front of them to get a better look at Izuku before he looks to Shinsu and asks what happened. Shinsu looks at Izuku, who hasn't even acknowledged Present Mike's presence, before he answers, we were sent to the shipwreck zone in the USJ. We were attacked by villains who had water-based quirks, but Midoriya managed to save us. Izuku shrinks when Shinsu mentions his name, which didn't go unnoticed as Shinsu explains he copied one of the villains' quirks before freezing them together. After that, we went towards the central plaza where Aizawa was fighting. Midoriya analyzed the villain's quirks. Shinsu takes a breath before he continues, one of them had 4 quirks. This catches Present Mike by surprise. It had super speed, super strength, regeneration, and shock absorption. Apparently the villains were going to use it against All Might in their fight. Present Mike comments, you keep calling the villain it, why do you say that? Shinsu answers, the only thing that looked remotely human about it was that it had 2 arms and 2 legs. They called it Namu. Present Mike nods before he asks what happened next. Shinsu answers, the leader, who I think was called Shigaraki, told the Namu to attack Aizawa. After that, Shinsu looks at Izuku as he buries his head deeper into his knees. I can't say. Present Mike looks at Izuku thinking that he was involved somehow before he replies, I see. Are either of you hurt? Shinsu shakes his head, no, I don't think we are. But Izuku hasn't spoken since, not that I blame him. Present Mike nods before he stands up and says, I'll have Recovery Girl check you two over just in case. I'm sorry you two had to go through all that. Shinsu hums with a nod as Present Mike walks away. Meanwhile, Uraraka and Ida stare at Izuku completely worried. Ida asks what happened to him. Uraraka answers, I don't know. He hasn't said anything ever since he came back. When I went to see if he was okay, he moved away from me, like he was afraid I would hurt him. Suyu looks on at Izuku and Shinsu. She still can't stop the feeling of complete terror that took her over when Izuku changed. Despite seeing Izuku break down in tears after it all, she still can't get rid of the fear that lingers in her. Izuku is her friend, but going anywhere near him is just too much for her. She knows she should try to help him, but she can't bring herself to do so no matter how much she may want to. She knows that whatever happened, it couldn't have been Izuku's fault, but she's too afraid to go near him. A black and purple portal opens in a dimly lit bar as Shigaraki tumbles out and backs away in fear as Kurogiri appears shortly after him. A voice from a TV screen says, so you have returned, but it seems that the Namu isn't with you. What happened? Kurogiri answers, when we arrived at the USJ, All Might wasn't there. However, we decided on sending the students to different areas throughout the facility to ensure they wouldn't be problematic. Shigaraki answers, trembling, I sent the cannon fodder to attack Eraserhead, but they weren't even able to put a scratch on him. I sent the Namu to kill him, but when he attacked this green-haired brat started freaking out. The TV screen asks with barely hidden worry in his voice that only Kurogiri picks up on, what did this green-haired child look like? Shigaraki answers as he begins scratching at his neck. He had this stupid messy green curly hair and freckles. He took one of Namu's punches without even flinching, then he killed him in one hit. The voice replies with worry, I see. Kurogiri, take care of Tamura. I have something I must take care of. The screen turns off as Kurogiri looks at Shigaraki thinking, who is that child to sensei? Meanwhile, a detective is writing down all the information that he and the heroes managed to gather from the students. Suddenly, Izuku stands up with Shinsu looking at him worriedly as he begins walking to the detective. Shinsu stands up and follows as he asks Midoriya, where are you going? Izuku walks over to the detective as the detective looks at him. Izuku holds out both of his wrists to the detective as he continues looking down, take me away. The detective looks at Izuku in surprise as he asks, what do you mean? Shinsu stands behind Izuku as Izuku answers, I can't stay here. I'm not. I don't deserve to be here. Shinsu says as he reaches out to Izuku, Midoriya. Izuku says as he looks up at the detective with a pleading expression, I need to be put away, where I can't hurt anyone ever again. The detective looks around to notice everyone looking at them, so he puts his hand on Izuku's back as he leads him away without Shinsu following. The detective requests a shock blanket from a nearby paramedic as he leads Izuku away. The detective wraps the blanket around Izuku's shoulder as he crouches down at eye level with Izuku. The detective asks carefully, can you tell me what happened? Izuku answers as he looks downward, I'm a monster. I don't deserve to be here. The detective feels his heart ache, because Izuku honestly believes that he's a monster. Why would you say that? Izuku answers as he looks at the detective with a pained expression, because I killed someone. Izuku explains as he looks down, recalling the events. I don't know what happened. I tried to tell Aizawa to get away, but he wasn't fast enough. If I'd been paying attention, then I could have warned him sooner. If I'd reacted faster, he wouldn't have gotten hurt. The detective says as he places a hand on Izuku's shoulder, trying to ground him. Kid, what happened to your teacher wasn't your fault. Izuku yells out in desperation as he looks at the detective, but it is. If I hadn't been so useless, Aizawa wouldn't have gotten hurt and I wouldn't have. Izuku looks down as he quietly finishes, I wouldn't have killed him. The detective gently pushes Izuku to sit down as he crouches with him. Who did you kill? Izuku answers without looking at the detective, feeling overwhelming guilt. The Namu. The detective sighs before he comments, kid, I don't know why you would think that you're a monster, but it sounds as though you wanted to protect your teacher. I was even told on 2 accounts that you managed to save your classmates from danger. Izuku doesn't look at the detective as he sighs, I know that it isn't ideal to have blood on your hands at such an early age. However, you can't blame yourself for what you couldn't control. Izuku replies as he looks back at the detective, but it's my quirk. I should have had control over it. I shouldn't have been able to lose control over it. The detective raises a hand to motion for Izuku to calm down before he says, what's your name? Izuku answers quietly, Midoriya. The detective replies, my name is Tsukachi Naomasa. I'm not exactly an expert on quirks or anything like that, but even I know that there are things about quirks that even the most knowledgeable scientists don't understand. Tsukachi continues, I've run into a few cases where a person lost control over their quirk and managed to hurt somebody. Accidents happen, but you can't hold yourself responsible for something you had no control over. Izuku wants to argue, but knows Tsukachi would disagree with him. Did you want the villains to attack? Izuku answers no. Tsukachi asks, did you tell the villains where your class was going? Izuku answers no. Tsukachi then asks, then how can you hold yourself responsible for something someone else did? Tsukachi explains, the villains knew the danger of challenging you, of challenging All Might, but they did it anyway. You did what you could to protect your classmates and save your teacher. Tsukachi adds, after a moment of silence, thanks to you, Eraserhead was able to get the help he so desperately needed. He's heading to the hospital where the doctors are going to save him. Izuku asks hesitantly, how do you know? Tsukachi smiles as he answers, I've known Eraserhead for a long time, and if there's one thing I know about him, he doesn't give up easily. Tsukachi places a hand on Izuku's shoulder as Izuku looks him in the eye. Things may not have gone how you wanted, but you did save someone today, and that means something. If Izuku had the energy, he would likely be bawling right now, so instead he hugs the detective that he just met. Tsukachi is taken by surprise from the sudden contact, but doesn't pull away and instead embraces the hug as he wraps his arms around Izuku. Sometimes the only thing a person can do for someone in their time of need is just be there for them and help them as best as you can. After a moment, Izuku pulls away as he looks at Tsukachi. Thank you, detective. Tsukachi smiles as he replies, you're welcome, Midoriya. Tsukachi leads Izuku back to the rest of the class where his friends are waiting anxiously. Once they see Tsukachi leading Izuku back to their group, Uraraka asks, is Deku going to be okay? Tsukachi answers, it'll take some therapy sessions and a long time, but I think that after a while he'll be just fine. Tsukachi's answer seems to sate their anxiety before he says, by the way, Midoriya. Izuku looks over his shoulder at Tsukachi as he smiles, I'm certain you'll make a great hero someday. Izuku replies with a small smile, thank you, detective. Tsukachi replies with a nod as he heads over to Netsu and explain what had happened. That afternoon, Inko rushes to the school to pick up Izuku. Izuku, are you okay? You aren't hurt, are you? Izuku shakes his head, feeling exhausted. No, Mom, I'm fine. Inko looks at Present Mike, who says the little listener is likely going to need a therapist after such a traumatic experience, but we think he'll pull through. He's a strong little guy, that much is certain. Inko was furious when she heard what happened, but since she was given time on her way here and after Present Mike's encouraging words, she couldn't hold on to her anger any longer. Inko nods as she replies, thank you for helping my baby. Present Mike waves a hand with a smile. It's no problem, miss. It's what heroes are for. Inko smiles gratefully at Present Mike as she leads Izuku back to the car. On the drive home, Izuku lays his head against the window as Inko comments, I called your father and told him what happened before I came here. He was so worried about you when he found out. I'm sure he'll want to talk to you when you're feeling better. Izuku hums, still feeling exhausted from today's events. Inko then says sympathetically, I'll let him know that you'll talk to him later when we get home. You just get some rest, okay? Izuku hums again as he lightly nods against the window. Once Izuku gets home, he immediately crashes on his bed and falls asleep instantly without even taking off his uniform. Inko decides to let him rest for the day, so she only cooks enough for herself that night. She calls Hisashi. Inko, what happened? Is Izuku alright? Inko answers, it's alright, Hisashi. Izuku's okay. He's just going to need some therapy, but other than that he's fine. Hisashi sighs in relief on the other line, thank goodness he's okay. Did the heroes tell you what had happened? Hisashi spits out heroes, but Inko doesn't hold anything against him for it. They told me that the villains were there to kill All Might. According to some of the villains that were arrested, they had something called a Namu that was apparently supposed to be strong enough to beat All Might. Inko then lets out a sigh. Apparently the Namu was defeated before it could harm anyone aside from one of the teachers. Hisashi replies, I see. Do they know who was responsible for the attack? Inko answers, they call themselves the League of Villains. The police are working on locating where they are, but don't have very many leads at the moment. Hisashi sighs before he comments, I just hope that Izuku won't have to go through something like that ever again. Inko replies with a nod, I know. That night Izuku dreams of the USJ. He dreams of Aizawa's head getting smashed into the pavement by the Namu. He dreams of losing control of not just his quirk, but his whole body, as if he was being possessed by something else. He destroys the Namu, watching it break down on the molecular level, turning into dust, but that's not all. He sees his hands wrapped around Shinsu and Tsuyu's throats as he lifts them in the air, choking them before they burst into blood. After that, he looks to see his classmates get hit by a red beam of light which cuts through all of them as they slowly disintegrate, reaching out to Izuku with blood spreading everywhere. He then hears the disembodied voices of his classmates say monster, freak, villain, abomination. Izuku tries to cover his ears, but his classmates' words beat him relentlessly. Izuku yells out, stop. Izuku pushes himself up from his bed in a cold sweat in the middle of the night as he slowly realizes it was all a dream. Izuku sits at the edge of his bed with his palms resting on his face and his elbows on his knees as he heaves a sigh, whether of relief or desperation that it was all just a dream he isn't sure. Izuku gets up and takes off his uniform in order to change into more comfortable clothes before he sits at his computer. Reading the news would likely make him feel worse, but isn't that what he deserves? Izuku shakes his head as he tries to push away the thought and decides to look up YouTube videos on anything but the news or heroes. Right now, he doesn't want to think about anything related to yesterday's incident, so he just watches cute videos on puppies and kitties to get his mind off of things. Izuku still feels exhausted, but the fear of having another nightmare keeps him awake through the night. Once morning comes, Izuku realizes that it's Friday, which means he'll have to go to school. After coming to that realization, he starts to panic. He'll have to go back to where everything happened. People will be curious as to what happened and why he tried to go with the police. Once everyone finds out what he did and what he was, nobody will want to be around him anymore. Everybody will figure out that he truly is a villain, a freak, a monster. Izuku isn't sure how long he stays lost in thought, with his heart pounding in his chest until he is broken out of his trance as Inko knocks on the door. Izuku looks at the door as it slowly opens to reveal Inko's worried expression. Are you alright? Izuku swallows the lump in his throat before he answers hesitantly, I am fine, Izuku sighs, I don't want to go to school today. Inko walks over to Izuku as she crouches in front of him and grabs his hands. It's okay, Izuku. I just got a call from the school and classes are cancelled for today, so you don't have to worry about going back just yet. Izuku sighs in relief since he isn't sure if he's emotionally or mentally ready to go back to school yet. Inko then asks as she rubs her thumbs across Izuku's hand, Izuku, would you like to see a therapist? Izuku looks at Inko as she explains, you don't have to see one right now, but your teachers, Hisashi, and I think it'd be good for you since you went through such a painful experience. Izuku nods in understanding before he asks, can I think about it? Inko answers as she brings her hand to touch Izuku's cheek with a gentle smile, of course, sweetie, you don't have to answer just yet. Just let me know when you're ready, okay? Izuku nods okay. Inko then asks as she stands up, are you hungry? I'm working on breakfast right now. It'll be done in a few minutes. Izuku answers with a light smile, yeah, I'd like that. Inko smiles contentedly even though she's still worried for how her son is feeling or what he's thinking. But she'll take having breakfast with Izuku as a win. On Saturday, Izuku goes out to Dagaba Beach to do his weekly cleanup. But he doesn't do it because he feels like it. He does it out of obligation, out of habit. Honestly, Izuku would much rather stay at home, sleep, and never wake up again. That'd be the best thing he could do for this world. Of course, he knows his mom would be worried about him if he ever did try to sleep in, and moping around would just make her worry even more. So right now, the best thing he can do is clean up the trash that people have left on the beach. It's the only thing he's good for after all. Suddenly, he hears a familiar voice call out, young Midoriya. Izuku looks up to see Toshinori coming down the steps to him. Izuku plasters on a smile as he replies, hey Toshinori. Toshinori walks up to Izuku as he asks, what are you doing? Izuku answers as he looks down at the trash bag in his hand, oh you know, cleaning up the beach. Toshinori hums in response before he asks worriedly, how are you doing? Izuku looks up at Toshinori with a pained smile, I'm doing fine. Toshinori replies with a knowing expression, come now Midoriya. I've heard what had happened at Yui. Izuku looks at Toshinori in surprise before he looks away shamefully. Toshinori adds as he reaches out to Izuku, it's okay young Midori. Izuku moves away from Toshinori's hand before he says with tears in his eyes, I don't want to talk about it. Toshinori lowers his arm as he says, I'm sorry Midoriya, that you had to go through something like that. Izuku says quietly, I'm a monster. Toshinori asks as he didn't hear what Izuku said, I'm sorry. Izuku repeats louder, I'm a monster. Toshinori looks at Izuku in shock as Izuku explains tearfully, I killed someone. I killed someone and I wasn't even punished for it. I took their life even though I had no right to do so. Toshinori says quietly as he moves closer to Izuku, young Midori. Izuku yells as he begins curling in on himself, I couldn't even save my teacher. All I could do was just stand there and let it happen even though I could have stopped it. I should have stopped it. It's my fault that He's in the hospital. Izuku falls to his knees as he begins crying while repeating, it's all my fault. Toshinori kneels beside Izuku as he places his hand on his back, young Midoriya. What happened wasn't your fault. Those villains knew what they were getting themselves into when they attacked Yui. They knew that they might not have made it back when they attacked. You can't blame yourself for someone else's actions. Izuku replies, but I killed someone. After a moment of thought, Toshinori asks carefully, did you want to kill them? Izuku sniffles before he answers quietly, still looking down, no. Toshinori asks, did you want your teacher to get hurt? Izuku answers again, no. Toshinori asks, did you want to protect your teacher and classmates? Izuku takes a moment before he answers quietly, yes. Toshinori then says as he places his hand on Izuku's back, then it's not your fault. You never wanted to hurt anyone, but you were thrown into a situation where you had no choice. Izuku then says as he looks at Toshinori with tears still in his eyes, but Toshinori cuts him off, no buts. Young Midoriya, you are one of the strongest, smartest, and most kind person I have ever had the pleasure of meeting. You have been through a lot, more than what you deserve, but you can't let this one incident bring you down, especially since you had no control in the matter. Izuku looks back down as he takes in Toshinori's words, young man, if you truly want to redeem yourself for what happened, then you must become a hero. Don't let this stop you, let it push you forward. Izuku looks back at Toshinori, who smiles. Every hero has made mistakes and every hero has done something they didn't want to in order to stop a villain. That's why you must work harder to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. Toshinori then says with pride, it may take a while, but I know you can do it, young Midoriya, because you too can become a hero. Izuku stares at Toshinori for a moment as tears form in his eyes before he hugs Toshinori as he starts crying again as Toshinori returns the hug and gently pat Izuku's back. It's okay, young Midoriya, I am here. The two of them stay like that for a moment before Izuku pulls away and wipes his tears. I'm sorry about that, Toshinori. Toshinori replies with a wave of his hand, it's alright, young Midoriya. Sometimes you need a good cry every now and then. Izuku smiles at Toshinori as he says, thank you, Toshinori. I really needed that. Toshinori replies with a smile, you're welcome, young Midoriya. Toshinori then says as he stands up and offers Izuku his hand, now then, how about we finish cleaning up? Izuku replies as he takes Toshinori's hand, why, you don't have to do that. Toshinori then says with a cheeky smile, you're right, but I want to. Izuku smiles before he says, all right, if you say so. The two of them begin cleaning the rest of the trash on the beach, with Izuku feeling much lighter than he did before. Once they're done and they've gone their separate ways, Izuku calls his mom, hey mom. Inko replies, hello sweetie. Izuku says, I think I'd like to see a therapist. Inko smiles on the other line as she says, okay sweetie, I'll make a call Monday and see about setting up an appointment. Izuku replies with a smile, thanks mom. Inko replies, you're welcome sweetie. How was your day at the beach? Izuku answers, it was nice. I think it was just what I needed to clear my head. Inko comments, that's wonderful sweetie. I'm glad you're feeling better. They both fall into comfortable conversation as Izuku makes his way home. Though he may not know what may happen, he'll try to face it with the best of his ability. On Monday during homeroom, Izuku and the rest of his classmates sit waiting for their substitute teacher to show up. Izuku sits anxiously at his desk as he tries to prepare himself for an explanation. As they're waiting, Tsuyu walks over to Izuku's desk. Midoriya. Izuku looks up at Tsuyu, who is shifting nervously. I wanted to apologize for how I acted at the USJ. Izuku blinks in surprise at Tsuyu as she explains, I was afraid of you, even though I knew that it wasn't your fault. Tsuyu then begins to tear up as she says, why, you don't have to forgive me. I don't think I would if. Izuku gently grabs her hand as he looks up at her sympathetically. It's alright Tsuyu, you shouldn't blame yourself. Unbeknownst to them, most of the class is watching as Izuku says, looking away, I was scared too. I was scared that I might hurt someone else, that I might hurt you or Shinsu or Aizawa. Izuku then says as he looks back at Tsuyu, but that's why I'm going to do my best to get control over my quirk so that something like that never happens again. Tsuyu replies with a quivering smile, thank you Midoriya. Izuku replies with a light smile, you're welcome Tsuyu. Tsuyu leans down as she hugs Izuku to his surprise. but he returns the hug before she goes back to her seat with a smile on her face. Once Tsuyu is back in her seat, Ashido asks with a mischievous grin, "So what was that all about, Tsuyu?" Tsuyu answers with a slight blush as she looks away, "I did something hurtful back at the USJ." Ashido replies, "Okay, but why did you hug Midoriya?" Tsuyu's blush deepens as she answers, I just felt like he needed a hug." Ashido then asks as she whispers, "Are you sure it isn't because you wanted a hug?" Tsuyu hides her face riveting before Aizawa opens the door covered in bandages. "All right, everyone settle down." The class stares at Aizawa as he makes his way into the class. Ada asks Mr. Aizawa, "Are you sure it is a good idea to work in your condition?" Aizawa answers Ada, "While I appreciate your concern, it isn't necessary." Aizawa then says as he looks over the class, "Now then, today you should know that the fight isn't over." The class begins to panic as most of them think not more villains. Aizawa explains as the tension builds in the class, "The sports festival is coming up." The class sighs in relief before Jiro asks curiously, "Is it really such a good idea to have an event like this after what happened at the USJ?" Aizawa answers, "Yui believes that it will boost the confidence in the public. Essentially, we'll be showing that the USJ incident had no effect on us. Plus, we'll be boosting our security this year to avoid any possible threats, so I suggest everyone here start taking training seriously from now on." Once lunch starts, Class 1 sees a bunch of students outside of their classroom. Kaminari asks, "What are these guys all doing here?" Kirishima adds, "Yeah, what do you all want?" Bakugo answers, "Isn't it obvious? These extras have come to scope out the competition." Kaminari comments, "Come on man, you're basically painting a huge target on our entire class." Bakugo replies as he glares at Kaminari, "As long as we beat them in the sports festival, it doesn't matter." Bakugo walks off as Kirishima comments to himself, "That's so manly." The students disperse as Class 1 goes to lunch. Before Izuku exits the door, Aizawa calls out Midori. Izuku looks over his shoulder at Aizawa, who is sitting in his chair looking at him between his bandages. "I need to speak with you." Izuku looks down guiltily before he looks at his friends with a plastic smile. "It's all right, guys. I'll catch up with you later." Izuku's friends look at him worriedly before Uraraka says, "All right, we'll save you a spot." Izuku nods as they exit into the hallway. Izuku walks over to Aizawa's desk looking at his feet. Aizawa says with Izuku standing in front of his desk, "Midoriya, look at me." Izuku pries himself to look Aizawa in the eyes with guilt building in his chest and tears beginning to fill his eyes. Aizawa says with finality, "What happened wasn't your fault." Izuku blinks in surprise as a few tears escape as he asks in disbelief, "What?" Aizawa repeats, "I said it wasn't your fault." Aizawa explains, "I should have stayed with 13 and gotten you all evacuated before taking on those villains. That was my mistake." Izuku replies, "No, Aizawa, it's not your fault. You did everything you could." Aizawa retorts, "If I did everything I could, then neither you or the rest of your class would have gotten involved." Izuku counters, "Then you would have gotten hurt even worse, or even." Izuku looks down, killed. Aizawa sighs before he says sympathetically, "It's not your job to worry or take care of me. It's my job to make sure you and the rest of my students are safe." Aizawa continues, "I understand that you were angry and upset when that Namu attacked me. I also understand why you lost control, and I don't hold any of that against you. However, you must understand that you shouldn't blame yourself for that. You did what you could to make sure everyone was safe. Besides, even though I hate to admit it, I owe you my life." Izuku looks at Aizawa in surprise, "Which is why I'm going to do everything in my power to make you the best hero you can be, understand?" Izuku begins to cry before Aizawa says fondly as he stands up, "Now get going, problem child. Your friends are waiting for you." Izuku wipes away his tears as he says with a bright smile, "Thank you, Aizawa." As Izuku runs off, Aizawa can't help but smile, thinking, "You're gonna go far, kid." Once Izuku gets his lunch and sits with his friends, Shinsu asks curiously, "So what did Aizawa want to talk to you about?" Izuku answers hesitantly, "He wanted to talk to me about what happened at the USJ." Uraraka asks as she places a hand on Izuku's shoulder worriedly, "Are you alright?" Izuku answers with a smile, "Why yeah, he just wanted to make sure that I was okay." Ida says thoughtfully, "I know that you were quite distressed after the whole incident, but I'm not quite sure why." Shinsu answers before Izuku, "The thing those villains brought to kill All Might tried to attack us and Izuku stopped it." Ida comments with a hand on his chin as Izuku looks at Shinsu surprised, "I see. That would explain what Tsuyu said during homeroom." Though Ida accepted Shinsu's answer, Uraraka thought differently as she looks at Izuku still worried. During lunch, Izuku gets a text from Inko saying that his appointment is after school and that she'll come by to pick him up. Izuku says as he looks at his friends, "Hey guys." His friends look at him as he explains, "My mom is going to be picking me up for my appointment." Uraraka asks worriedly, "Are you sick?" Izuku waves his hands as he answers, No, I'm going to see," Izuku says quietly, "a therapist." Uraraka sits back as she replies, slightly embarrassed and sad, "Oh, okay." Ada replies, "It's all right, Midoriya. We understand and you must take care of yourself." Shinsu adds, "Yeah, we get it." Izuku replies with a smile, thanks guys. That afternoon, Inko takes Izuku to a nearby mental health care center. As they enter, the woman at the front desk says, you two must be the Midori. Inko nods as she replies, that's right. The woman says, I'll let Dr. Kaido know that you're here. Inko nods as she leads Izuku to a seat beside her. Izuku looks around the mostly empty room with a table in the center with several magazines and a TV in the upper right corner of the room playing a cartoon. After a few moments, the nearby door opens to reveal a man with long brown curly hair and amber eyes, Midori. Izuku stands up as Inko holds onto his hand, causing him to look back at her. It's okay, sweetie, you can tell him everything. Izuku swallows with a nod before he goes with the doctor. As they walk to his room, Kaido asks, so how are you feeling today? Izuku answers, kind of nervous. I've never seen a therapist before. Kaido chuckles as he comments, yeah, not very many children do, no offense of course. Izuku replies, none taken. Once they reach his room, Kaido opens the door for Izuku as he walks in behind him. As Kaido goes to sit at his desk, so Midoriya, we'll start by trying to get to know each other a bit. Kaido introduces himself, I'm Dr. Kaido, and I'll be your psychiatrist from now on. Izuku asks, confused, I thought you were a therapist. Kaido replies with a wave of his hand, people often get the two confused. Basically, I'm here to make sure that you're mentally healthy, whereas a therapist helps you sort out your feelings and come to clearer decisions. Izuku comments with a nod, I see. Kaido then says as he leans back in his chair, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Izuku gulps as he says, well, my name's Izuku Midoriya. I'm 15 years old. I'm currently in the hero course at Yui High. My quirk is called All Formulas. Kaido nods before he asks, can you tell me what your quirk does? Izuku answers, my quirk allows me to analyze basically everything and copy it so long as I have the physical ability to do so. Kaido asks, what exactly can you do right now? Izuku explains, well, if I analyze a textbook, I can recall whatever information I may need during a test or homework assignment. Kaido snorts as he comments, that sounds useful. Izuku smiles lightly as he continues, I've memorized a few fighting styles that I've physically seen and I've copied several quirks. Kaido's eyes widen before he leans forward, you can copy quirks? Izuku shrinks in his seat as he replies quietly, why yes. Kaido shouts with a grin, that's so awesome. Kaido asks, how many quirks have you copied? Izuku blinks in surprise before he answers, well, I've copied around about 80 or so. That includes my classmate. Kaido laughs as he sits back in his seat and comments, man kid, you're going to be an awesome hero once you graduate. Izuku replies with smile, thanks. Kaido then says, regaining his composure, well, as I already said, I'm Dr. Kaido. I work here, obviously. Izuku snorts as Kaido continues, I'm 42 years old. My quirk is empathy. Essentially, I can pick up on people's emotions. When I'm in public areas, it can get a bit overwhelming, but I've managed pretty well so far. It also helps with the job. When I talk to my patients, I can pick up on what they're hiding and try to help as best as I can. Izuku comments sympathetically, that must have been hard for you. Kaido replies, it wasn't easy, but I managed to pull through. Izuku asks cautiously, so can you feel what I feel? Kaido looks at Izuku before he sighs and answers, yes, I can. I know that you've gone through something pretty heavy and that you're having trouble accepting it and you're feeling a little guilty, which isn't a surprise, but that's why you're here. Kaido looks Izuku in the eyes as he says, I can't say I've been where you have, but I know how you're feeling. I know that words of encouragement and simply saying it wasn't your fault will only work for so long. I can also tell that you have some apprehension with taking medication. But you don't have to do this if you don't want to, okay? Izuku replies with a nod, okay. Kaido opens a desk drawer and pulls out a deck of cards, how about we play a game? Izuku looks at Kaido confused before he explains, patients don't usually tell me their feelings on the first meeting. It's kind of like dating if you ask me. Izuku chuckles as Kaido deals out the cards with a smile, I mean, I don't think I'd tell some random person I just met how I feel either. Which is why we first need to make a connection, and the best way to do that is through games. Kaido then says as he picks up his cards, think of me as your soon-to-be friend you can complain to whenever we're here. Izuku chuckles as he picks up his cards, thanks Kaido. Kaido replies with a nod, you're welcome Midoriya. The two of them play a relatively short game in comfortable silence before Kaido lets Izuku go. The following 2 weeks go with Izuku training on weekdays, clean the beach with Toshinori on Saturday, relax on Sunday, meet Kaido on Monday afternoons, and repeat. Izuku sits in the waiting room of Class 1 with Uraraka sitting on his left and Shinsu on his right, with Izuku shaking his right leg nervously. Todoroki approaches Izuku Midoriya. Izuku's eyes shoot up at Todoroki as he stops moving his leg. Todoroki says as he has the whole class attention, it's obvious that you're the strongest one in our entire class. Izuku blinks in confusion at Todoroki before he states, however, don't think that I won't do everything in my power to beat you. If you really want to win, then I suggest you fight with everything you've got, because if you don't, then I will beat you. Shinsu says with a glare, back off Peppermint. Midoriya doesn't need your shit right now. Izuku says as he stands up. It's alright, Shinsu, he's right. Everyone looks at Izuku as he meets Todoroki's gaze. However, if you truly mean what you say, then I expect the same from you, Todoroki. If you really want to win, then you're going to have to fight all of us tooth and nail, because not a single one of us will give you an edge. Got it. They both stare each other down as Kirishima comments, stepping forward. Easy guys, we're all friends here, alright. Todoroki replies as he turns away, we're not here to make friends. Izuku sits down as he comments quietly, some of us just want friends. Uraraka and Shinsu move closer to Izuku as if to protect him before they're all called out to the field by President Mike. Midnight says once all the classes are out on the field, alright, and for our opening ceremony we have Izuku Midoriya. Everyone looks at Izuku as he thinks to himself, aw crap. Izuku swallows thickly before he begins walking to the stage with shaky legs. Once he's on stage, Midnight hands him the microphone. Hello everyone. Izuku gets feedback as he pulls away from the microphone. Izuku tries again nervously. Hello everyone. Izuku feels everyone's gaze on him as he stands on the stage with his legs trembling. Izuku closes his eyes as he takes a breath and exhales. Izuku says as he looks forward to nowhere particularly, we've all gathered here today to compete in a festival that could very well decide our futures. The general education classes will gain the opportunity to rise to the rankings of heroes. Business classes will gain experience of marketing those of us involved. The support classes will work in trying to gain favor of business companies to work for. And those of us in the hero course are going to do everything we can in order to be recognized for our prowess. Izuku takes a shaky breath before he continues, all of us here are working and fighting to be recognized for our abilities. Even though some of us may fall, we will still gain experience in return. This is only the first sports festival of our year, which will give everyone the knowledge and experience to succeed in the following years. We all fought to get into UE, and now it's time for all of us to fight for our positions, to follow our dreams and go beyond. Izuku raises his fist as he yells out with his fellow students and the audience plus ultra. Midnight takes the microphone from Izuku as she whispers, you did a good job, kid. Izuku nods before he makes his way off stage as some of his fellow students cheer. As he makes his way back to his group, Shinsu comments with a smirk, so how are you feeling? Izuku answers with a shaky smile, panic would be how I describe how I'm feeling. Shinsu chuckles as Uraraka says with a determined smile, we've got this, Deku. Izuku nods as Midnight says, for our first round we have. The screen behind Midnight reveals the obstacle course. Izuku hesitantly uses all formulas once he gets into position in the back. As he does so, he notices how all of the participants are getting close together and how narrow the exit is, meaning that with so many people going through it, the tunnel will get congested. This means that more than anything, he'll have to go over all of the people in front of him. Izuku looks up at the ceiling of the tunnel before he smiles with an idea in mind. President Mike calls out, begin. As all the students start pushing and shoving to get through, Izuku extends a wooden hand that digs into the ceiling before swinging himself through the exit along with his fellow classmate. Once Izuku is on the other side, he sees the ground before him frozen, so he uses fire breath to melt the ice as he lands and hits the ground running. As Izuku runs, he sends out fire in front of him in order to get rid of the ice as he passes his classmate. Once the ice is clear, he starts compounding a few of his speed enhancement quirks to catch up to Todoroki, who is currently in the lead. However, once he catches up with Todoroki, he sees several giant zero-pointers like from the entrance exam. Are you kidding me? Izuku doesn't have time to react before Todoroki freezes the robots and runs between their legs. Izuku notices that the robot in front is currently off balance and that anyone beneath it will get crushed. As the robot falls, Izuku compounds all of his strength quirks into his right fist while using shock absorption and throws a punch at the robot, sending out enough wind pressure to send it toppling backwards onto the other robot. Izuku's right arm starts to feel sore, but he uses his regeneration quirk before using his speed enhancement quirks and a jumping quirk in order to catch back up with Todoroki again by jumping on the robot's remains. The next obstacle looks to be platform-based with wires connected between each platform. Todoroki just runs across the wire as he freezes it with expertise. Izuku uses all formulas along with his jumping quirk in order to gauge how much force he needs to use as well as where he's going to land. Izuku jumps from platform to platform with ease, not stopping to rest or anything before he lands on the other side and uses his speed quirks. Up ahead of him seems to be a landmine zone which Todoroki crosses by freezing the ground beneath him. But Izuku adds strength enhancement quirks into his legs in order to make himself go faster. Izuku runs across the minefield with pink explosions going off behind him, causing Todoroki to look back at him in surprise before Izuku finally passes him. Izuku's legs start to ache from the use of so many quirks, but continues to push forward regardless and crosses the finish line with dust following behind him. Izuku lets go of the quirks in his legs as he begins panting on the field with the audience cheering for him and his victory in the first round. Although Izuku doesn't know it, Toshinori sits up in the stands applauding his victory with a proud smile on his face. You've done well, young Midoriya. Meanwhile, Enko is at home crying proudly with nearby tissues as she says, "My baby boy." In a dark room, Shigaraki stares at the screen in front of him as he says, "Sensei, why does this brat have different quirks like you?" Kurogiri answers, "Perhaps he has a copy quirk." Shigaraki begins scratching at his neck as Sensei silently thanks Kurogiri for his answer. Izuku looks up at the crowd with tears in his eyes as he thinks to himself, "I did it, I won." Izuku looks down at his right fist as he wonders sadly, "But do I deserve it? Don't other people deserve to win over me? Monsters like me shouldn't even be here." Izuku hears a cheery voice call out from behind him, "Deku." Izuku snaps out of his thoughts as he looks behind him to see Uraraka running up to him with a smile on her face. "Man, you were really awesome out there." Izuku blushes as he replies, scratching the back of his head, "Thanks, Uraraka. Sorry I kind of left you behind." Uraraka comments with a wave of her hand, "It's alright. I mean, it is a race after all, so no hard feelings." Shinsu walks up behind her as he adds, "Yeah man, besides you were too far ahead of us that we would never be able to catch up." Izuku nods in agreement with a hum before Uraraka asks, somewhat worried, "Are you alright, Deku?" Izuku looks at Uraraka before he smiles and answers, "Yeah, I'm fine." Uraraka asks skeptically, "Are you sure?" Izuku answers, "Yes, I'm sure." Uraraka replies, still feeling unsure, "Alright. But if you ever need anything, you can ask us, right?" Shinsu nods in agreement as Izuku looks between them before he smiles gratefully, "Yeah, thanks guys." Midnight announces as everyone gathers around the stage, "All right, for the second round of the sports festival we have." The screen behind her reveals the cavalry battle. Midnight explains, "During the cavalry battle you'll get into teams of 3 to 4 with one person being held up by the rest of their teammates. However, each person will have an assigned number based on their placement in the previous round, and so all the numbers will be added up for each team. So 42nd place will be 5 points, 41st will be 10 points, 40 will be 15 points, and so on, but first place will be," Midnight announces with a sadistic smile, 1,000,000 points. Everyone turns to look at Izuku with hungry gazes as he swallows thickly in trepidation at being a target for everyone else. Midnight says with a wink, "You'll all be allowed 15 minutes to choose your teammates. Make sure you choose wisely." As Izuku looks around, everyone more or less disperses around him. Every time he makes eye contact with a classmate, they just walk off. Izuku looks down as he thinks, "Of course nobody would want to be on a team with me. It would be signing your own death sentence." Izuku hears, "Deku, are you alright?" Izuku turns around surprised to see Uraraka staring at him with a worried expression on her face. "Why yeah, I'm fine." Uraraka comments, "You said that before too." Izuku replies with a nervous chuckle, "Yeah, I was just thinking." Uraraka continues staring at Izuku before she concedes, "Alright. Well anyways, I wanted to ask if you wanted to be on the same team." Izuku looks at her shocked, "Really? You want to be on a team with me?" Uraraka smiles comfortingly, "Of course, Deku. We're a team, remember, just like the battle trial." Shinsu walks up beside her, "Don't forget about me. You and I are practically family after what happened at the USJ." Izuku's lips begin to quiver as he tries to hold back his tears. Uraraka glares at Shinsu, "Why'd you go and say that?" Shinsu raises his hands defensively, "I'm sorry. I didn't know he'd react like that." Izuku interrupts, "It's okay guys." Uraraka and Shinsu looks at Izuku as he beams at them, I'm so happy I have friends like you." Uraraka and Shinsu both nod at Izuku as they say, "We're with you, no matter what." Suddenly Izuku hears a feminine voice behind him say, "You're the one in first place, right?" Izuku looks behind him to see a girl with long pink hair and goggles as she quickly gets into his personal space. "Let me be on your team, Mr. First Place." Izuku backs away, both scared and confused. "What?" The girl introduces herself, "My name's Mei Hatsum. I'm with the support course and I'd like to use you in order to gain some attention from the businesses that are watching us. I want to get some good connections, and in order to do that I need to get noticed, which is what I'm going to use you for." Izuku and his friends think to themselves as they sweat drop, "At least she's honest." Izuku replies with a nod, "Okay, but if you don't mind, could you show me your quirk?" Hatsum replies as she raises her goggles off her eyes, "Of course." Izuku uses all formulas to analyze Hatsum's eyes. "So you've got an eye-based quirk like me. It seems as though it allows you to zoom in to see things at a distance, or in your case help in precision for making equipment." Hatsum replies, "Well, aren't you a smart cookie? I assume your quirk allows you to analyze and copy quirks." Izuku and his friends blink in surprise as Hatsum comments, "I saw you using a bunch of different quirks during the obstacle course, which gave me a few ideas to work with for my babies." Uraraka asks confused, "You're what now?" Hatsum pulls out a box of gadgets as she repeats, "My babies." Shinsu comments as he begins looking through the gear, "You've made a lot in just the short time school has been open." Hatsum puffs up her chest in pride as Izuku also looks through the gadgets while using his all formulas to analyze each gadget. Izuku begins piecing together a plan before scanning the entire field for people with mutant-based quirks or showing off their quirks. Izuku smiles before he comments, "Alright, I think I've got a plan." The three of them group around Izuku as Uraraka says excitedly, "Let's hear it, Deku." After the 15 minutes are up, midnight says time's up, everybody get into positions for the second round to start. Izuku sits atop of his team with Uraraka and Hatsume behind him with Shinsu acting as the horse of their team. Present Mike calls out once all the students are in position, begin. As soon as the round begins, everyone rushes towards Izuku's team, but he already has a plan. Izuku thrusts both of his hands forward, sending out a web of branches before freezing them over, creating a web-like ice barrier. Izuku says aloud, boosters now. Izuku activates his jetpack as Uraraka and Hatsume use their hover boots just as the ground beneath them softens from one of their opponent's quirks. Izuku holds his hands out to the sides as he sends out cement which begins covering the ground beneath them. Uraraka calls out as they slowly start to descend, we're going to have to land soon. Izuku calls out, Uraraka, use zero gravity on Hatsume and me. Uraraka uses her quirk on Izuku before she uses it on Hatsume, while Izuku stops sending out cement and uses zero gravity on Uraraka and Shinsu, allowing them to float for a little longer. Izuku then uses Hellfire on the still wet cement below them. Once the cement is dry, Izuku says, I'm going to release gravity now. Once Izuku releases zero gravity, his team lands on a solid cement platform, allowing Uraraka to release her quirk as well. However, they all hear Bakugo yell out, Deku. The barrier between them and the rest of their opponents begins to tremble from Bakugo's explosions. Izuku commands everyone turn 90 degrees left. His team does so as the barrier shatters, revealing their opponents. But what they aren't prepared for is Izuku to send forth a glacier to block the newly formed hole. Uraraka comments with amazement, wow, that's amazing, Deku. Shinsu adds, gotta say I'm glad we're on your side. Izuku chuckles before he apologizes, sorry we aren't using your babies very much, Hatsume. Hatsume replies with a grin, it's alright. As long as we win, I'll get to show my babies in the next round. Izuku chuckles again before he uses all formulas and zoom to see past the ice and at the other teams. Bakugo is of course infuriated at being blocked twice in a row. Todoroki stares at the glacier and what's left of the barrier with clear frustration, and every other team seems to have given up on going after Izuku's team. Izuku comments, looks like we're in the clear for now. Meanwhile, Ida comments, Todoroki, you need to use your fire in order to get past this barrier. Todoroki replies with frustration, I can't. Yaoyorozu adds, Todoroki, Midoriya used ice knowing full well that you won't use your fire. If we want to get his headband, then we're going to need as much fire as we can get. Kaminari comments, yeah bro. Todoroki glares at the ice in front of him before he says, let's just take down as many people as we can before the next round begin. Ida replies reluctantly, got it. Yaoyorozu adds, understood. Kaminari says, whatever you say, man. At the same time, Bakugo yells, Deku, you bastard. Get your fucking ass out here so that way I can kick it into next week. Kirishima comments, I don't think Midoriya is going to come out just because you ask. Bakugo retorts, shut up, shitty hair. I'm not going to let some shitty Deku beat me again. Ashido quietly asks herself with a sigh, why did I think teaming up with Bakugo was a good idea? Zero replies, I'm right there with you. Suddenly Bakugo feels a tug on his head as his headband flies off. Bakugo turns around to see a blonde with his hair parted to the side and blue eyes with a smug smile, you really shouldn't let your guard down. It seems pretty obvious that Midoriya is playing the long game just like 1B. Class 1 losers like you aren't going to get far in this competition. Bakugo then says in tranquil fury, Kirishima, there's a change of plans. Kirishima looks up at Bakugo to see a fiery rage in his eyes, we're going to kill every last one of these shit stains before we take out Deku. Kirishima grins along with his fellow teammates, whatever you say bro. Present Mike comments in the announcer's box, amazing. Who could have known that Midoriya would have thrown up a barrier as soon as the battle started? Of course, being the biggest target on the field, he would have to come up with a major defense. But who would have guessed this? Aizawa comments, Midoriya is one of the most observant students in his class. Not sure if that's because of his quirk or if that's just who he is. In any case, he took advantage of his opponent's strengths and weaknesses. He was able to buy himself some time when using what I assume is Kamui Wood's quirk, followed by Todoroki's ice. After that, he used the support equipment he gained from his teammate to take flight in order to enact the next part of his plan. Aizawa continues, he then used Cementos quirk in order to create a platform for his team before using Endeavor's quirk in order to speed up the hardening process. Midoriya also had a plan in case someone broke through his barrier, which was to summon a glacier to essentially plug the hole. It's obvious that out of everyone here, Midoriya is the one who plans ahead of everyone else. Present Mike comments, and there you have it from our very own Eraserhead. Aizawa replies, could you not be so loud? Outside of the stadium, Mount Lady nudges as she stares up at the screen with a smile, hey Kamui. That kid used your quirk in the cavalry battle. Kamui watches the screen in surprise as he comments, I had no idea that he had the ability to copy other people's quirks. Death Arms adds, I'd hate to be the villain to fight against him once he goes pro. In the stands, Endeavor grits his teeth in seething rage as he thinks that Brat stole my quirk and used it as a goddamn heater. What a waste of power. Endeavor continues to tremble and barely contain frustration. Once the cavalry battle is over, Izuku uses Hellfire and Fire Breath in order to melt the ice and burn the wood he created, while Cementos takes care of the cement platform Izuku created. As Izuku is melting the ice, Uraraka and Shinsu wait behind him. You guys go on ahead. I need to finish this up before I go. Otherwise it'll just make things more difficult when the final round starts. Uraraka looks like she wants to wait for Izuku, but Shinsu places a hand on her shoulder. Come on, Uraraka. We'll save a spot for Midoriya and get him some food when he gets to the lunchroom. After a while, Midnight walks over to Izuku as she asks, "What are you doing, Midoriya? Shouldn't you be getting something to eat?" Izuku answers as he continues to focus on the task in front of him. "I made this," Izuku thinks for a moment. "Wall. It's only right that I tear it down." Midnight hums as she places her hand on her chin thoughtfully. "You know, I could probably call down 13 to take care of it for you if you want." Once Izuku hears 13's name, he flashes back to the USJ, seeing the Namu crushing Aizawa's skull, the look of fear on his friends' faces, killing the Namu. Izuku replies, trembling, "It's all right, Midnight. I've got this." Midnight notices Izuku's shaking form before she realizes why. "Sorry, I probably shouldn't have brought them up." Izuku replies, still trembling slightly, "It's all right. Why, you just wanted to help." "I get it." Midnight can't help but feel guilty as she looks at Izuku's trembling shoulders and his quiet response. Midnight feels as though she's completely helpless right now, but she takes a breath before she says, "If you ever need anything, you can come talk to me." "Okay." Izuku stops using his fire quirks before he looks at Midnight, completely surprised. What? Midnight explains, rubbing the back of her neck, "I know I'm not the most approachable teacher here, but even so I'm still a teacher and I want to make sure that all of my students are okay, you know." Izuku stares at Midnight surprised. He had only seen her persona, not who she really is, which is why it's so surprising to see her actually care. Izuku smiles lightly as he replies, "Thanks, Midnight. I'll keep that in mind." Midnight nods with a smile before she walks off. Once Izuku is done with melting the ice and burning the wood away, he heads for the nearest exit. As he turns the corner, he sees Todoroki leaning against the wall. Izuku yelps in surprise, "Todoroki, what are you doing here?" Todoroki replies as he faces Izuku, "I need to speak with you, Midori." Izuku replies with a confused expression, "Oh, okay." Todoroki stares at Izuku for a moment, which only makes him feel even more nervous than before. "You know, if we don't hurry up, lunch will end soon." Todoroki continues staring at Izuku as he thinks, man, this guy takes stoic to a whole other level. Todoroki finally states, "I was overpowered." Izuku replies, "I'm sorry." Todoroki answers, "During the obstacle course and during the cavalry battle, you came up with a plan to perfectly counter not only my own quirk but everyone else's quirks as well." Todoroki says as he looks at his left hand, "Your plan was completely foolproof to the point where I couldn't do anything." Izuku replies, "You could have used your fire. Honestly, I thought that was what you were going to do. I know you said before that you don't use your fire, but I had no idea you would sacrifice a chance at winning a round in the sports festival because of it." Izuku's eyes are drawn to Todoroki's scar as he replies, "I made a promise to myself a long time ago that I would never use that bastard's power." Izuku looks at Todoroki with a confused look before he explains, "From what I understand, you've seen Endeavor for who he really is." Izuku replies with a disinterested expression as if he couldn't care less about Endeavor. "He's a glory hog who cares more about fighting, or should I say killing villains, than saving civilians. Not that he won't kill them too if they're in the crossfire." Todoroki looks at Izuku slightly surprised at how harshly he just insulted his father without hesitation. Todoroki replies as he regains his composure, "Yes, well, unfortunately it seems that the media as well as most of society don't see him for the monster he really is." At the word monster, Izuku feels a sharp pain in his chest as he recalls killing Namu, but Todoroki doesn't notice it. Todoroki asks, "Have you ever heard of quirk marriages?" Izuku looks at Todoroki in surprise, which slowly turns into one of horror at the implications of what Todoroki said. Todoroki explains, "My father used his money and status in order to bribe, blackmail, and threaten my mother's family in order to buy her." Todoroki spits out "buy" as if it were filth. He then says in complete disgust he used her in order to create his own little masterpiece, the perfect weapon, and his way of becoming number one. Izuku wants to throw up as Todoroki continues, "He used my mother in order to make me, even though he had 3 other kids before me." Izuku looks down as he feels something bubbling deep within him, something he hasn't felt before. "Once my quirk came and he started to train me, which mostly consisted of beating me until I was able to replicate what he wanted me to do, or until he was satisfied." Izuku clenches his fists as he grits his teeth, and all formulas flashes red for a moment in his eyes. Todoroki says as he places his left hand over his scar, "In every memory I have of my mother, she's always crying. In my last memory, she called my left side unsightly, before she poured boiling water on my face." Izuku realizes now that what he is feeling is undeniable righteous indignation. Todoroki then says, "That's why I refuse to use my father's power." After a moment, Todoroki says as he takes his leave, "Sorry for wasting your time." As Todoroki walks away, Izuku says loud enough for him to hear, "You're not a monster." Todoroki looks back at Izuku, taken by surprise as Izuku looks him in the eye. "I know how you feel, using a power that isn't of your own choosing. Feeling as though you have to rely on someone else in order to feel useful. But unlike me, you're not a monster." Todoroki turns to face Izuku completely as he continues to be honest. "I never cared much for Endeavor. I never gave him a second thought once my father showed me what he was really like. However, just because your father is a disgusting, filthy, worthless vermin doesn't mean that you are." Izuku stares Todoroki in the eye. "You may be related by blood, but that doesn't make him family." Izuku then says as he walks past Todoroki, "By the end of the day, I will show you that out of the two of us, I'm the real monster here." Todoroki watches Izuku's back as he walks away with a sense of purpose, still wide-eyed in surprise. Todoroki can't help but think to himself, "Why would you think that you're a monster?" Once Izuku reaches the lunchroom, Uraraka waves him over where she, Shinsu, Ida, Hagakure, Yaoyorozu, Jiru, and Tsuyu are sitting. "Hey Deku, Shinsu and I saved you a seat." Izuku goes over and sits between Shinsu and Uraraka as he sees Katsuden sitting on the tray in front of him. Izuku asks as he looks at his friends, somewhat surprised, "Who got me Katsuden?" Ida answers as he raises his hand, "I did, Midori, as congratulations in taking first place in not only the obstacle course but also the cavalry battle as well." Izuku asks, "How did you know Katsuden was my favorite?" Uraraka answers with a wink and sticking out her tongue, "I told him about it. He asked what you would eat and I told him Katsuden was your favorite food." Izuku looks at Uraraka before looking at the rest of his friends. "You guys are saints." Tsuyu comments, "You might want to hurry up. Lunch is almost over." Ada replies, "Although don't eat too fast or else you'll get indigestion and you won't be able to compete in the next round." Shinsu chuckles as he comments, "All right, mom friend." Once lunch is over, Midnight announces, "All right, for the final round we're going to have one-on-one battles. Here are the first matches." Behind Midnight on the giant screen it shows brackets along with everyone who are in the top 4 teams of the cavalry battle. Shinsu comments as he and Izuku see the first bracket. "Looks like you and I are up first." Izuku nods as he replies, "Yeah." Shinsu turns to Izuku as he says, "Hey Midoriya." Izuku looks at Shinsu as he holds out his hand. "No hard feelings for whoever wins, right?" Izuku smiles as he turns completely to Shinsu and answers as he shakes his hand, "Yeah." Midnight then says as she cracks her whip, "Now then, for the first match we have Izuku Midoriya versus Shinsu Hitoshi. Everyone else head to your designated areas so that the match can begin." Present Mike comments as Izuku and Shinsu stand opposite each other on stage while the rest of the students exit the field. Who would have thought we'd see a fight between two teammates in the first match? Let's see how these friends handle their match. Once all the students are in their designated areas, Midnight calls out, "Begin." Shinsu asks, "Could I get a little help here, Midoriya?" Izuku quirks an eyebrow before Shinsu comments, "I mean, I don't stand a chance against you if you use your entire arsenal of quirks." Izuku smirks before he lifts his left sleeve while using creation. Present Mike asks, "What on earth is Midoriya creating?" Aizawa answers as he recognizes the form. "It looks like my capture weapon." Shinsu asks with a surprised look on his face, "You're going to use Aizawa's weapon against me? Come on, that's just cruel." Once the capture weapon is finished, Izuku tosses it to Shinsu. Shinsu looks at the weapon in surprise before he looks at Izuku, who is simply smirking with a nod. Shinsu chuckles as he picks up the capture weapon and wraps it around his shoulders. "All right then, let's get started." Izuku activates all formulas as he and Shinsu rush towards each other. Shinsu sends forth the capture weapon, but Izuku ducks beneath it before delivering a spin kick to Shinsu's abdomen. The kick causes Shinsu to stumble back, but Shinsu pulls back on the capture weapon in order to trap Izuku. However, Izuku backflips over the capture weapon as it comes within centimeters of him before jumping back to regain some distance. After Shinsu has brought the capture weapon back to him, he charges at Izuku with his capture weapon at the ready. Izuku realizes that there is no way to avoid Shinsu without getting caught, so the only solution is to go through. Izuku charges at Shinsu full speed as he grabs hold of the capture weapon. To Shinsu's surprise, Izuku wraps the capture weapon around Shinsu. Shinsu struggles to get the capture weapon off of him, but unfortunately for him, Izuku already has him wrapped up in his own weapon. After Shinsu falls to the ground, Izuku pulls both ends of the capture weapon as he pins Shinsu to the ground. Midnight calls out as she cracks her whip. Shinsu Hitoshi is unable to battle. Izuku Midoriya is the winner. Izuku lets go of the capture weapon as it unravels around Shinsu as he holds out his hand to help him up. "Sorry about that, but I wanted to give you a fair shot." Shinsu replies as he takes Izuku's hand, "It's all right. I would have been a bit angry if you didn't come at me with the intent to win." Shinsu says as he and Izuku walk off the field together. "By the way, I get that you wanted to give me a fair shot, but how come you didn't use any of your quirks?" Izuku answers as he looks at Shinsu, "I did use one of my quirks. I used all formulas." Shinsu replies, "Ah, I see. So you were using all formulas in order to analyze my movements, which is why you were able to dodge my capture weapon." Izuku answers with a nod, "Yep." Shinsu comments offhandedly, kind of reminds me of the Sharingan from Naruto. Izuku replies, it's kind of like that. As Izuku and Shinsu get to Class 1A's area, Uraraka waves them over. Hey guys. Izuku sits beside Uraraka with Shinsu sitting next to him. Uraraka comments, your fight was super awesome. Izuku blushes slightly as he and Shinsu reply, thanks. Tsuyu asks aloud, I wonder if Zero has a plan for beating Todoroki. Ada replies, it would certainly have to be an impressive plan. Uraraka asks as she looks at Izuku, what do you think, Deku? Izuku places a hand on his chin as he begins thinking it isn't impossible to beat Todoroki with Zero's quirk. But all things considered, Zero has a very small chance of winning. Kirishima comments from behind Izuku, I get that Todoroki is a major powerhouse and all, but you should still give Zero some credit. Izuku thinks to himself, it's not that Zero can't beat Todoroki, it's just that Todoroki has something to prove which makes him dangerous. Todoroki has a purpose, to prove that he doesn't need to rely on endeavor to be a hero, but that will only get him so far. In the beginning of the match, Zero wraps his tape around Todoroki's abdomen before slinging him across the arena. However, just as it seems Zero is going to win, Todoroki freezes the entire stage with a giant glacier that reaches the stand. Midnight asks with half of her body covered in ice as she shivers, Zero, can you move? Zero answers with only his head and forearms showing from the ice. RYUKK kidding. I see can't feelin' anything. Midnight calls out Zero is unable to battle. Todoroki wins. Todoroki walks over to Zero with a solemn expression as he begins to melt the glacier. Sorry for using so much power, I was just so angry. From Izuku's perspective, Todoroki seems sad, which isn't too hard for him to understand since he let his anger get the best of him. Izuku realizes as he thinks to himself, Endeavor must have said something to him before the match started. Izuku clenches his fist as he grits his teeth, which catches Uraraka's attention, who asks worriedly, are you alright, Deku? Izuku looks at Uraraka slightly confused before she comments, you seem pretty stressed. Izuku answers with a light smile to cover up his anger, yeah, I'm fine, just thinking of how I'm going to beat Todoroki. Yaoyorozu asks, are you sure you can do that? I understand that you're powerful, but would you even be able to react fast enough to counter Todoroki's ice? Izuku looks at Yaoyorozu before he gets an idea. I think I know exactly what to do to beat Todoroki. Izuku gets up as Uraraka asks curiously, where are you going? Izuku answers as he leaves, setting my plan in motion. Hagakure asks as she looks at Uraraka and Shinsu, do either of you have any idea what he's thinking? Uraraka shrugs as Shinsu answers, I have no idea what he could possibly be thinking, but considering it's Midoriya, it'll probably be something that would overpower Todoroki. Yaoyorozu comments as she contemplates, Midoriya left after I asked him if he was sure he could beat Todoroki. Maybe it has something to do with my quirk. Izuku returns shortly after Hatsune surrenders after making Ito look like a fool while using him as her advertisement. Uraraka asks curiously, where'd you go to? Izuku answers as he sits beside her, nowhere. Shinsu comments skeptically, you don't honestly expect us to believe that, do you? Izuku replies, no, but you know that I won't tell you. Shinsu says after a moment, touche. Ibara and Kaminari's match ends comically fast, with Kaminari getting trapped by Ibara's vines manage to trap him while his brain is short-circuited. Ashido beats Aoyama with an uppercut, which honestly wasn't all that surprising from Aoyama's weak constitution. Tokoyami beat Yaoyorozu by attacking her relentlessly before she accidentally stepped outside of the ring. Once it was Kirishima's match, Uraraka gets up and walks off without saying anything, which catches Izuku's attention. Uraraka sits in the waiting room stewing in her own anxiety before she hears a knock at the door. She answers as she was startled, why yes. Izuku gently opens the door with a worried expression, hey Uraraka, are you alright? Uraraka answers with a shaky smile, why yeah, I'm fine. Izuku doesn't believe her before she concedes with a sigh, I'm actually really nervous about my fight with Bakugo. Izuku replies as he rubs the back of his neck with sympathy, yeah, I know what you mean. He's definitely not going to make it an easy fight for you. Izuku then suggests, you know, I could help you come up with a plan for how to beat Bakugo, if you want. Uraraka replies with a light smile, you really are amazing, Deku. You keep on reminding me of that. Izuku looks at Uraraka genuinely confused before she says with confidence, but I want to do this on my own. I don't want to continue relying on you if I don't have to. Izuku comments with a smile, I get it. Just remember that I'll be cheering you on. Uraraka blushes slightly before she replies, thanks, Deku. Present Mike calls out for the next match as Uraraka gets up to leave, wish me luck out there. Izuku nods as he heads back to his seat to watch his best friends fight. Honestly, he's pretty nervous about the fight as well. He wants to help Uraraka, but he knows that he can't always fight her battles for her, so all he can do is be there for her when she needs him. Plus, while he has calmed down after his talk with Todoroki, it likely won't take much to piss him off, and seeing his former bully hurt his best friend just might set him off. Uraraka stands opposite of Bakugo in the arena thinking, alright Ochako, you got this. You've already got a plan, now you just have to pull it off. Midnight calls out, begin. Uraraka wastes no time rushing Bakugo. but Bakugo already has an explosion ready for her which she barely manages to dodge while getting slightly burned. Uraraka charges again, staying closer to the ground. Bakugo sets off another explosion. The two of them continue like this, with Uraraka picking up more and more injuries with each attempt, but it's all according to her plan. Izuku can tell what Uraraka's plan is right off the bat, and he has to admit that it's actually an ingenious strategy, if not a bit insane. The chances of Uraraka's plan actually working is pretty high, but then again, considering that this is Bakugo, he'll likely put everything he has in blocking her attack, which means she mustn't let Bakugo know her plan before she activates her quirk, and if her plan does fail, she's going to need a backup plan. Izuku thinks with his hands clasped together between his knees as his legs shake nervously come on Uraraka. After a while, some heroes begin booing Bakugo and calling him a bully, which Izuku can't exactly argue against. But right now he's not being a bully. Right now Bakugo is actually fighting with his full strength. He'd be a fool to allow Uraraka anywhere near him, which is apparently something these heroes don't understand. It seems that these idiots also think that Uraraka isn't strong enough on her own to face Bakugo head-on, which is exactly what she's doing. Aizawa calls out the heroes for their lack of professionalism and states that Bakugo is simply taking his opponent seriously. Izuku is actually proud Uraraka is pushing Bakugo to the edge, but at the same time he can't stand to see her get hurt. The tugging in his chest is telling him to stop the fight, to protect Uraraka, but that would be an insult to her and her dream of becoming a hero. So Izuku simply sits there holding himself back as he bites into his lower lip. Finally, Uraraka stops rushing at Bakugo, wearing the lower part of her gym uniform and her black tank top. Uraraka pants before she says thanks Bakugo. Bakugo looks at Uraraka confused as she finishes, bringing her hands up for not taking your eyes off me. Bakugo looks up to see a sky full of rubble as Uraraka releases her quirk. When she does, Bakugo raises both of his hands to the sky as Uraraka rushes towards him. Izuku yells as he stands up, "Go Achako." Uraraka gets within centimeters to Bakugo before he lets off the biggest explosion he has ever made, completely sending the rubble out of the arena, sending Uraraka flying back and tumbling across the concrete. Bakugo lowers his hands, panting as his arms tremble before Uraraka forces herself to stand up as she wipes the sweat off her cheek. Izuku cheers, "You can beat him, Achako." Uraraka rushes at Bakugo again as he gains a feral grin, but his excitement is short-lived as Achako falls mid-run unconscious. Midnight holds out her hand to stop Bakugo as she rushes over to Uraraka and check her over. Midnight calls out Uraraka is unable to battle. Bakugo wins. Ida comments with disappointment, "Uraraka was so close, wasn't she?" Ida cuts himself off as he realizes Izuku is no longer there. Ida asks as he looks around, "Where did Midoriya go?" Hagakure answers he kind of ran off as soon as Uraraka fell. Yaoyorozu comments he might be heading to Recovery Girl's office. Kaminari smirks as he comments, "I guess Midoriya has a thing for Uraraka." Jiru jabs Kaminari with one of her earphone jacks as she retorts, "Could you stop being a creep for like 2 seconds? Kaminari replies as he rubs the place where Jiru hit him, "Am I not allowed to just be a guy?" Shinsu answers with a deadpan, "You could try being a decent guy." Hiroshima chuckles as he comments, "That's cold, bro." Izuku quickly opens Recovery Girl's door as Uraraka, "Alright." Recovery Girl jumps at the sound of the door suddenly opening before she answers with Uraraka lying on one of the beds unconscious, "You should knock before you enter a room." Izuku bows shamefully as he apologizes as, "Sorry, I was just worried." Recovery Girl sighs as Izuku walks into the room. "I won't be able to heal her until she wakes up, but after that she might pass out again." Izuku comments because she wouldn't have enough stamina to stay awake. Recovery Girl nods as Izuku sits on the bed across from Uraraka. Recovery Girl asks as she stares at Izuku, "You seem to care about Uraraka quite a bit." Izuku blushes as he replies, "It's not like that." Recovery Girl quirks an eyebrow before Izuku comments, calming himself down, "I mean, she's the first real friend I've ever had." Recovery Girl releases the tension in her shoulders at Izuku's honest answer. Izuku then says with a mirthless chuckle, "Besides, I don't think she'd see me like that anyway." Recovery Girl asks as she takes a seat at her desk, "What do you mean?" Izuku realizes that he had said that out loud as he blushes. Well, I mean, as she could do so much better than me, you know. I mean, there are plenty of good-looking guys out there that would kill to have a chance with her. I mean, I don't stand a chance. I'm just glad she even considers me a friend." Izuku stops his mumbling as his expression turns sad, "Even though she doesn't know what I am." Recovery Girl asks with concern, "What do you mean?" Izuku sighs before he answers, "All my life I've been called a villain, a freak, a monster. But it wasn't until after the USJ attack that I realized ... they were right." Recovery Girl's mouth opens even though she isn't sure what to say. After all, she had been suspicious of Midoriya the second she heard that he could copy quirks with a single look. Izuku then says as he looks at the palm of his hands, "Honestly, I just don't deserve that kind of life after what I did." Recovery Girl purses her lips before she gets off her chair, then whacks Izuku's leg with her syringe cane. "Oh, what was that for?" Recovery girl answers, children like you shouldn't be so bleak, especially as young as you are. You never know what the future holds for you. Izuku counters, but Recovery girl cuts him off as she raises her cane to him. No buts. Recovery girl says with finality as she lowers her cane, I may not know much about you, Midoriya, but after hearing how much you care about your friend, I can say that she'd be a very lucky girl if she's got a friend like you by her side. Izuku stares at Recovery girl in surprise before she says with a smile, now then, you should get going, your match will be starting soon. Izuku stands up as he makes his way to the door. Right. Izuku stops as he opens the door. Recovery girl hums as she looks at Izuku, who turns his head to smile over his shoulder. Thanks for that. As Izuku leaves, Recovery girl looks at Uraraka's sleeping face with a smile as she comments, you sure are a lucky one. Recovery girl makes her way to her desk as she says to herself, perhaps I was wrong about him. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.